Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to the Friday night edition of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott, and we have a special panel as we are going to go over all the big news from yesterday. This is going to be Grant Cameron's power show tonight. Why not? He's still pumped up that Canada's off to the gold medal against those stinking no good, ought to be tossed out of international hockey, American hockey team. And, those damn brothers. Oh, yeah. Yeah, who are half Canadian, by the way, just to put it out there. Lee Strauss is here, and it's the return of Nicole Sakach. How freaking cool is that? We're going to say hello to each and every one of you. We got Kitty Caddywhack in the gold medal position, Chris 14-210 in the silver, and Tim Mothman and his goatee sharing the bronze medal. Baby UFO, how are you tonight? Paula Foss, nice to see you. As we scroll on down on our roll call to say hello to Race Fan. Race Fan will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind, to the left of the studio. We move on down, and we say hello next to Robert Lamoth. Good to have you here. Mama Catherine, there she is. Mwah! We love you, Mama Catherine. I hope you're having a great night. I know you're going to enjoy this show because I know you love Grant. Everybody loves Grant. Even Grant loves Grant. That's how awesome it is. Scrolling on down, we say hello to Fat Nuts, Paramarv, how are you? Carol Amario, and A.A. Ron, the tree guru. How you doing, my friend A.A. Ron? Nice to see you. Michael Morris, the attorney at large. Good to have you here. Trucker Andrew and Karen in the Woo Train. Thank you both for coming on in. Jaquetta and John Jackson, nice to see you both here. The lovely, the talented Deanna Ann, there she is. Stayed up late on the East Coast to catch this one. Tammy Benjamin is here. Tammy Benjamin will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind. To the right of the studio. Do not make eye contact. If you make eye contact, she will not sign for you. That's in her contract, by the way. Luscious Jules, how are you? Road Flare, nice to see you. T-Bone, my man, thank you for kicking off the Super Chat tonight. The Super Chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And you know, when T-Bone's excited, all of you should be excited as well. Frankie B, how you doing, my friend? As we scroll on down on our roll call, up next, we are going to say hello to, well, let's scroll on down. Doug Shelby. Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Matthew Goodka and K17 Odd, good to have you both here. Scrolling on down, we say hello to Maker of Stuff. How are you doing? And Integrationing. Nice to see you. Panda on Fire. How are you? Lori Rosenfeld. Nice to have you here. United We Stand. Jay Truthseeker and Grace. Welcome to SOR Chat. Supporting from Michigan tonight. Thank you, Grace, for coming on in. Richard Minish. How are you? As we scroll on down on our roll call to say Lil Cam over on YouTube. So excited about Grant Cameron being on the show tonight. He watched 17 videos of Grant in high speed to warm up for tonight. 17 videos in high speed. It took him 22 minutes. He's ready to go. Moving on down, as we say hello next to Operation Shutdown and Undead Jed. Nice to have you here. All right, moving on down. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. Skip to my Lou. Good morning to you. Aussie Boss Tiger. Thanks for coming on in. Excuse me. Andrew Rushton, thank you for joining us. Algaray over on Twitch, so pumped up that Nicole has returned that he's actually done 144 chin-ups in 3.5 minutes. He's so jacked for Nicole to be here tonight. Let's get the radio side going, guys. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We got a power panel tonight of Grant Cameron, Nicole Sakach, Lee Strauss is here. Later on, we may have Tim Seanor joining us to talk about the news of UFOs and the president and his opinion. We're going to get to them momentarily, but first we are in roll call on our YouTube side saying hello to D. Henderson. Thank you for joining us. And Beelzebrad has a devil put aside for me. And Lil Mikey, nice to see you. Super Crazy, nice to have you back. Mel WD40 is here lubing us up because you can't have Grant on the show without Grant being lubed, and Mel is lubing him up as we speak. And Lori, thank you for that great super chat. Throw those horns up, everybody. Let's rock.
Are you ready to hear your mystic voice of the night?
It's time to wake up.
He's here. Shush. Be quiet. He's ready for you to listen. Let's point our ears towards the little cabin in the woods, where together, my friends, we own the night. It's time for Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott.
From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. You can follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by the Caribou Con, September 18th through 20th. Grant Cameron will be there. I'll be there. Get your tickets at cariboucon.com. We have an amazing panel tonight. Grant Cameron, Lee Strauss, Nicole Sakach are here to talk about the giant news of Donald Trump talking about the UFO subject. We're going to go 3 straight hours with this. Grant is going to be here for the first hour and a half. We're going to continue with the panel right through to the end of the show. Why? Well, because we can. We literally can, because we're going to get into this topic about the big news that has happened this week with Donald Trump coming on out and saying that he wants to release, and he is demanding the release of all the UFO, UAP, extraterrestrial files. So I'm going to get to the panel right now. There's no point in just keeping everything up and running. Let's bring him on in. Lee Strauss, good to have you here, my friend. Grant Cameron, legendary, and I mean that word in quotation marks and capital letters, legendary UFO and presidential researcher and author, and Nicole Sakach from the Weird Desk coming on in to talk about this subject. Grant, I'm going to start with you because I'll be honest with you, when the news broke, I had the first person on my mind, Grant Cameron. Needed to know you. And I called you. You didn't pick up because you were probably trying to pick your jaw up from the floor. But what was going through your mind when all of this news of Donald Trump on Air Force One being asked the aliens question by Fox News reporter Peter Doocy after Barack Obama had made the comment saying aliens are real? What was your thoughts about how it all played out?
Yeah, I thought it was pretty exciting because you're basically now going to have a situation where it's going to go back and forth like a tennis game between Obama and Trump because they really don't like each other, and so they're going to go back to Obama. What do you say about Trump? And then he said this, and go back to Trump. Okay, now Obama said this, and I was pretty shocked, but I was just as shocked. Last night it was when Trump went on Truth Social and made this statement, which is I guess we can get into it. It's kind of not what I expected, and I didn't realize that till today. Where he doesn't, he remember when the Mar-a-Lago thing happened, he talked about being able to declassify everything in his mind, and that is true. The president can basically declassify stuff. But if you see his Truth Social post last night, it didn't say that he was going to declassify anything. He said identify and release. So he could have just said, I'm declassifying everything, and it would be game over, but he didn't do that. But the strange part was the first thing I do every morning is I check my stocks. Second thing I do every morning is I check what's Donald Trump up to today, because there's always some news and he's always got something going. So this morning I got up and checked my stocks, and then I went to see what the big thing was with the UFO story, and the UFO story was gone. It went from, it lasted 12 hours, and now it's back to, you and I both know, it's back to tariffs. And he said, the tariffs had been overthrown by the Supreme Court, and he was all upset. And so then I did a podcast with my assistant, just discussing the situation. And then it came off the podcast, and it changed again. Then it's 10% tariffs around the world, and he's going to use another thing to do it. And it's just this 24/7 news cycle where the UFO story seems to have always been forgotten, and it's only not even a day yet.
It is a busy, busy time where the news cycle is racing on through. Nicole Sakach coming out of retirement to talk about this subject. Once again, I knew we could convince you. How did I have it? Donald Trump talking UFOs, Barack Obama talking aliens, Grant Cameron coming on the show, and of course, Lee Strauss being here as well. Nicole, it's so good to have you back on the show. Thank you, my friend.
It's so good to be here. I'm glad to see Grant's face and Lee and everybody in the chat room. Hi, SOR space travelers. And yeah, much like you, it wasn't really immediate, like I needed to call Grant, but it was like Grant is presidential UFO. So I have been rolling around in Camp Khaki Pants over the last year, and I'm very skeptical. And so my return might not be so happy and forward thinking, pro disclosure as I was before. I think this is all kind of coming from limited sources and is being blown way out of proportion. So I'm excited to be back. It feels like disclosure's going down in flames.
But you're the power person, because, as you know, I introduced you to a certain guy who may brief Donald Trump on the subject, where the Weird Desk is, and I introduced a number of people to him. And as I told you a couple months ago, you're the last one standing. Everybody else is broken off, and you were still having some conversations. So you're the person who actually can get the scoop on the inside by the guy who's actually friends with Donald Trump. And so we're relying on you to go back there and verify or negate this whole thing.
I'll have to take that mission to task. Honestly, it hasn't come up in the last few weeks of conversation. And I try to play it cool, I don't want to be like, oh, so tell me about this. Have any predictions?
You still talking about cooking? You're always talking about cooking. You're supposed to talk UFOs with him. We
talk all sorts of stuff. We were talking goats and dogs the other day. So, which aligns with, other endeavors they're pursuing. But we haven't talked politics since Venezuela became a part of the United States.
It's important that you are a little more skeptical. You've been around our friend for a number of years, at the CIA or wherever he is now, and you seem to have maybe some of that skepticism he has rubbed off on you there, but he's a loon, crook, or worse.
Well, I don't know if he really rubbed off on me or if I just maybe went back to my roots a little bit. I've also been called Mrs. Greenstreet several times over the last couple of years. So I don't think, and even, I was brainwashed by Richard Doty after I met him, and Sean Cahill's magical lion mane did something to my brain too. So not everybody can have an effect on me, maybe as well as you did, Grant, because that's where my hope still remains for disclosure, is that it's in the phenomenon, not in what we're seeing out of our disclosure club boys and the government. So, which leads back to my favorite phrase.
I want to bring in Lee and introduce Lee here for a minute, guys. Lee Strauss from Element 115 on our YouTube channel of Spaced Out Radio. And Lee, you've had some time to look back on this very, very interesting topic that has come out. What is your thoughts now that you've had time to breathe and look everything over?
I'm concerned, guys. I really am. And this is why. Now we're talking about releasing files and digging for files and all of that sort of thing. What happened to their, a speech already apparently formulated and been written? I thought we were expecting a speech here. Now we're talking about files that have to be pulled out of God knows where and released. So I'm a little bit confused and a little bit concerned.
Let's get Grant Cameron's point on that, because Grant, if anybody knows, you're going to know about that.
Well, Laura, Trump said he's got a speech and that it's going to be presented, that he's got the speech all ready to go. But then when you hear him talk about the situation, he's always said he's skeptical. Starting in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, he said, if I assume what you're talking about is outer space, well, I'm not interested. And it's true that if there was money in this, if the technology was there, Donald Trump, I think, would be in it. He'd be in, trying to make some money. But the speech was written, and he said, I really don't know. I don't know if they exist or not. I'm kind of skeptical. So what kind of speech was he going to give? I mean, if Laura Trump was right that he's going to give this speech, that's going to be what he's going to say. UFOs. I don't know. I'm skeptical. I talked to these Air Force guys and the Navy guys, and they were such nice guys, and I really don't believe. And that's what he said to the Fox News guy. He said, "Do you believe?" It's all this thing about he really doesn't believe the thing, and it comes down to was he ever briefed? And if you listen to someone like Michael, the guy that wrote 4 books on him, he says Trump. If somebody comes in, if the Joint Chiefs of Staff come in with a PowerPoint, he said Donald Trump is gone in 90 seconds. He will not be briefed. He just still will not sit through a PowerPoint. And so he's got this opinion that he really doesn't believe this kind of stuff. And so then the question comes down to, what he's been told. So we can get into maybe later. I can talk about the FOIAs, because I actually got my FOIAs back from the Trump administration library, or from the Trump library a couple of days ago. And one of the questions I had was, I want all the files from Rance Priebus on briefing Donald Trump on UFOs. And I think there's 700 pages or something like that. And that was Larry Larry, they call him Larry the Loan Shark. He's a guy from he's got a lot of money from Philadelphia. He called me up when Trump first came in, and he said, I want to ask you, where are the crafts, where are the bodies? And I said, what do you want that for? He said, we're going to brief Donald Trump through Rance Priebus, the first chief of staff. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, because they're not going to tell him. I said, who's not going to tell him? And he said, well, they're not going to tell him, the government. And I said, well, he hires the CIA guy. He hires the NSA. And as we now know, Donald Trump can fire everybody. If he can try, fire everybody. And so I said, well, if he hires all these people and then they don't tell him what's going on, who's to blame? And it doesn't sound like they've really told him what's going on, or he's sort of disregarded. I'm not sure he's maybe gotten some sort of briefing, but it doesn't sound like he really knows. I mean, to say something like, I really don't know. I met these Navy guys, they're really nice guys. I saw these videos, but I really don't know. It makes me think that he really wasn't really told too much.
So do you think he's pandering because there is so much interest in the subject right now then?
Well, I think right now, I think he's throwing darts at a board in terms of the midterms. If he loses the midterms, he knows he's going to be, impeached and may end up in jail. So, I mean, he's going to do everything. And this is one of the things that the base wants. I mean, whether it's the pedophile thing or whether it's the UFO thing, these are big topics. It's a conspiracy world now. And there's a lot of voters who are in that. And I think he sort of got caught off guard. If you see what happened, that's when he said Obama talked about aliens. Now, he talked about aliens, but he didn't say it was classified material. And Obama was right that there are probably aliens. And then Obama said, they're not in Area 51. That's right. And then he said, I've never met an alien, because he always uses humor to walk around the subject. And that's right. He's probably never met an alien. And then Donald goes into this whole thing about, oh, he broke the law. He's releasing classified information. And that's when the Fox guy said, oh, you mean aliens do exist? And that's, I think, when he suddenly realized, oh my God, what did I just get into here? And so I think he made rue the day, because we were told in 1991 by Dr. Eric Walker, who's the highest guy that anybody's ever talked to. He said, when you catch it, when you figure it out, what are you going to do? And now you've got a situation where Donald Trump owns the cover-up. He's gonna face 1,000,001 questions, and he may not have answers to almost any of them. And he's in a situation where he may want to go back to the good old days with the Epstein files, because this is going to be a nightmare. You're just going to get one question, like the Epstein. He's going to say, why do we quit talking about this? Why do we talk about something else? He's just going to get frustrated, because that's what Eric Walker said. You're just curious. Admit it. You're just curious. And that is like, we're going to ask this question: where are they from? Why are they here? And question after question after question, because all we now know UFOs exist and there's aliens. So what more do you need for disclosure? But there's 1,000 things people want more for disclosure. But it's all curiosity type stuff.
Do you think, though, I was watching a couple reports today with the mainstream media on this, and they seem to be focusing on whether or not President Obama broke the law by saying aliens are real. I don't personally think he did. I think that he made a comment on his own opinion on a question that was asked, that he would have already been pre-screened. So he knew the question was coming.
Yeah,
right?
he was in an interview with this, her name is escaping me. She was a little 6-year-old girl who was on the Ellie show, and she knew everything about presidents. And they brought Barack Obama on, and he said, have you got a question for the president? She said, yeah. Are there aliens? And he said, well, we really don't know, but we haven't had contact with them. He said, but if we do have contact with them, you're the first person I'm going to tell. So he always uses this sort of thing that he's sort of admitting it, but he's not really saying I got it out of classified material. And he had actually walked that statement back already. He said, I believe there's extraterrestrial life out there. So he'd walked it back before this conversation on Air Force One with Donald Trump. So this whole deal, it's almost like, and then the weird idea was Donald Trump says, well, I'll have to bail him out by declassifying, which he didn't do. He just said, review and release. He didn't say declassify. And to me, that's the last thing he would ever do to Barack Obama. If he could find a way to throw Barack Obama in jail, he would do it. So the idea that he's going to bail out Barack Obama by declassifying, that's total nonsense. I think he's just playing the odds that he's going to get some votes out of this, that a lot of people are going to be very happy and he can put his name on it. I mean, if the cover-up does come, he's a guy that likes to have his name on everything, and he's going to be getting the award as being the guy that made the disclosure.
Grant, I want to ask you one question before I get Nicole back in here, because a lot of people have been wondering, how much does a president actually know about this subject? Do they care? Do they have the intrigue that people like you and me and our audience does?
Well, I think they tell him, like, if you listen to Jim Semivan, he said that the whole thing is a PED, a Presidential Emergency Action Document, which means that the president is running the cover-up. It's an executive program, and that's why Congress can't get anything, because they don't have the security clearances, and it's not a congressional thing. They have no right to know anything about what's going on because it's an executive program. And so he would have to have something. They may sort of read him in. If you listen to the statements by Eric Davis talks about the fact that he hasn't made it public yet, that he talked to Ford. And Ford admitted that, yes, he had seen the Holloman Air Force Base film when he was briefed as president. And he talked to Bush. And Bush had said, yeah, the Holloman thing was real and it was very high security. And so we know that those presidents. But then you get Quayle, who was vice president, said that the president and I worked on this at great length and we weren't able to get anything. Jimmy Carter said there are many possibilities, but nobody has answers, which makes me think that the cover-up is the fact, as Jim Semivan says, we've got bodies and crafts, but that doesn't mean we know where they're coming from, that they really don't know anything. And that comes to what I'm working on right now, this whole thing that I think, Nicole, you're on the interview we did with Jack Sarfati, where Jack Sarfati tells the story about the craft. And you can't get in the craft unless the craft allows you in the craft. And that's when Lukatsky said in 2011, we were in a congressional facility, and I told them that why we had breached the craft. We'd gotten in the craft. And then you hear in the last interview he did, they asked him, how did you get in the craft? And he said, I can't talk about that. And that's his whole idea, that the craft opens the door for you. And it's this whole thing where it's very, 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 very complex. And if the government doesn't know anything, that's a pretty good reason. If they know we've got bodies, we've got crafts, there's UFOs, there's beings are coming from somewhere. That's why all the statements you see coming out of the government, you got to realize they're parsed. They always say we have no proof of extraterrestrial life. But if you take a look in the UFO community, it's probably maybe better than half of the people in the UFO community no longer believe it's extraterrestrial. It's something more than extraterrestrial. So they're parsing the statement. They say there's no proof of this, and they're telling the truth, but they're walking around the questions that you're actually asking.
Nicole, I want to bring you in here because there's so much to talk about. We got 4 minutes to go before we go to break here on our UFO panel with Grant Cameron, Nicole Sakach, and Lee Strauss. Nicole, there's so much about what is being covered up, whether it's governmental, whether it's in the hands of private sector, the crash retrievals, the UFOs, the alien bodies, whatever we can try and manage up here. Where do you think this sits? Where, if we do have these craft, if we do have all of this technology and alien bodies, where do you think it's hiding?
Ooh. Well, this is something that I have been trying to maybe theorize over the last year in my skepticism, and it's kind of come at me from a couple different ways, because I don't believe that it can just be only in, well, I guess it's now called the Department of War, and in all defense. So it can't all be in the hands of contractors like we like to point fingers at, like Lockheed or Northrop or, insert. So what the lines I started digging on, it was kind of something interesting that Mr. Weinstein had said about if the UFO cover up and the UFO program is essentially like a Manhattan Project 2.0, well, where are the scientists and the great minds that would be needed to work on these projects? So you can kind of determine how many people are graduating with these advanced degrees. And then if they don't get sucked up and into our government and end up like around Virginia or something, then, they end up in other places like down in Texas, where the real Manhattan Project kind of got extended and gets worked on still. So then this umbrella puts it into the Department of Energy, of course. So then you still have to figure out, well, where's all the cover-up money coming from? Because we know this has got to be expensive if they're running these experiments or trying to figure out what this new alternative energy is. So where's the money coming from? Is it truly being black channeled through our government through back doors and unaccounted budgets, or is it being funded by some sort of investment group, maybe on Wall Street? Well, then that kicks up some very interesting crossovers of who's interested in what kind of science and where they're throwing their money around. And that kind of limits your scope down a little bit too. So Dave, in a roundabout way to answer your question, I think it's hiding in pockets of the Department of Energy. That's where I think it's hiding. And I think the funding is coming probably from more public sources and than we recognize, and maybe in the stock market. So,
well,
yeah,
that makes sense. It does make sense, but there is this categorical theory that these pieces are at places like 29 Palms or Wright-Patterson Air Force Base,
right,
or in other secret facilities that are run by these corporations. And if that is the case, well, then we'll never be able to see what we have. We'll never be able to see what is actually truly going on, because the quickest way to bury a story is to put it in private sector. So that way nobody has the ability to find out what the truth really is. And Lee, I want to get your response on that. We have Lee Strauss, we have Nicole Sakach, and of course, the man, the myth, and the UFO legend himself. Grant Cameron is here, everybody. God, I love saying that. We're blessed here on Spaced Out Radio. All of you tuning us in, I hope you're enjoying this excellent panel on the UFO subject tonight. We're going to be back in the next half hour. Stay tuned, everybody. All right, we're clear. There we go.
I can tell the truth. We'll have to bring up the fact that Lockheed put up $10 million for the ballroom.
Oh, it's so strange. And that's where I don't think anybody has the whole thing. And Grant, it's like you have said over the years, you know, it's like they get a little piece and then they have to shelve it for a while, then they pull it back out. And I think every time they pull it back out or shelve it, no matter where that's coming in and out from, it does get spread out a little more or thrown into academia and twisted into something else. Like, I don't think anybody really knows the pieces of the puzzles that they're working on, which is why we keep getting all these strange whistleblowers that don't quite make sense, but we know they've seen and undergone something real and worked on very, you know, real things as well. But
or as they say, I mean, that's one of the things I question, the whistleblowers. I just can't figure out why they're not in jail or why, like Dan Smith, when Ron told him
that's
about
what
9/11, he went and reported him to the FBI, and he reported him to the FBI for a number of things. And that's why don't you go to the FBI? If some guy comes and says, I'm going to tell you about the most highly classified secret in the United States, I'm going to violate my security clearance, and I'm going to tell you. And it's like, because that's what happened to me. They came to me and I said, they sent you to me. Are you kidding me?
Right. And that's what I think our term whistleblower is very broad. Very, very, very broad and wrong. I would maybe say more informant, but you know, it's like arguing with the tide at this point. Just use the word. You brought it up though earlier, though. All of them are dancing around the lingo. Like even Trump's statement, he called it unidentified aerial phenomenon again. Didn't use anomalous, and then said UFO, and then Gillibrand's statement kind of came out and corrected that. And you know, Lee, you said you were worried about documents, or he's saying bring on the documents. Does he not know what Arrow's been doing for the last 5 years?
A lot of this stuff has already been brought out in the skiff, right? So we know that this stuff has already been out. Let's bring it out. You know, there's been video, there's been photos, there's been documents. And Congress has seen all of this stuff, right? In the skip. So let's just bring it on out.
I just want to say something to our chat room, because this topic has gone full political at the moment. Guys, we are nonpartisan. We are non-partial. This isn't about Orange Man bad or Obama bad or anything like that. So if you're going to comment in the chat room I'm saying this before it starts, okay? I don't give a care what your politics are. This isn't about politics. It's about UFO politics. Big difference here. So just make sure that everybody is just chill, relaxed, and enjoying the show. If you're not a fan of the president, or you are a fan of the president, I'm Canadian. I got no skin in the game. Don't care. So let's just try and make sure that in the chat room, we just keep it respectful for everybody. Thank you, guys.
Plus, you got to remind them that there have been 14 or 15 administrations that have handled the UFO problem, and they've all handled it exactly the same way, whether it's Democratic or Republican.
Starting back with
clarification on the governmental side, if it is about Trudeau or Carney, that is allowed. That is legal in our chat room. Okay. So,
but you're in the wrong province if you're going to be going there. You got to be, if you want to join the other side there, you got to go to Alberta.
I'm a prairie boy at heart, even though I've never lived on the prairies.
Oh, there you go.
John Lamb Jr., how are you? Let's see. Edwin Guerra, how are you tonight? Thomas Rock, nice to see you. And let's see here. I think we're caught up. Benno, how are you in Australia? We got about 1 minute. Shadow Feather, nice to see you. Big thank you tonight to Matthew, Lori, and T-Bone for the super chats tonight. We greatly appreciate your love and support of Spaced Out Radio. You can join Grant Cameron. You could join Lee Strauss. You could join me, Dave Scott, September 18th through 20th at Caribou Con in beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. We're going to have ghost tours. We're going to have speakers. We're going to have sky watches. We might even have a nice little Bigfoot tour. Yeah, we're going to do it all. Our keynote speaker, Mr. Grant Cameron, is here tonight, and my hero and idol in this field. And yes, after 10 years of knowing him, I still get giddy like a schoolgirl every time he comes on. Yes, Grant, I still want your autograph too. Right?
And they may get to have a craft. You had a craft land and beings going around, so they may get to actually meet the whoever they are.
Right. We coming back in 5 seconds. Mark Cosgrove, how are you? Lou Seabell and Blue Skies, nice to see you. Here we go. We are into the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We got a great panel talking about the latest UFO news coming out of the White House and President Donald J. Trump. Grant Cameron is here. Nicole Sakach joins us, and Lee Strauss is here from Element 115 on our YouTube side. And Lee, so much going on about the whole aspect of how this is playing out. Looking back at the timeline here, let's go back a month. One of our former guests from November, Mark Christopher Lee, and we're looking to get him back on the show as we speak. He comes out and says that he has a source within the White House that says Donald J. Trump is going to disclose on the 79th anniversary of Roswell, which is July 8th. The speech is already written. A couple weeks later, he comes out and says, my source within the White House is going to be with me at a press conference, and this person is going to announce who they are. Then Laura Trump comes out on her podcast saying that her and her husband, Eric Trump, have asked their daddy and daddy-in-law about the UFO subject, and normally he's very loud and proud to discuss anything, but when it came to this topic, he became very sheepish. Then Obama comes out with his statement, aliens are real, but not at Area 51, because there's no deep underground military bases at Area 51. And yet, if you've talked to people who've actually been there and worked there, and some of them are in the UFO field, they'll tell you, yeah, most of those buildings have subfloors that go down a long, long way. And then all of a sudden, the news with Donald Trump happens. When you look at this timeline and you look at everything, do you think this is set up? Do you think that there is something about this that just isn't adding up to 2 + 2 = 4?
Well, look at the administration and all the people in his administration that had come out within the last 6 months and said stuff about UFOs and the possibility of alien life. And the fact that, they could travel through time and space and different dimensions even. This has all come out. We've heard from plenty of people in his administration that the fact is that aliens are most likely here and among us. But I just want to pop back before you went on break. You were talking about the money and where's the money coming from? Well, of course, the DOD, at least this year, got $838 billion. Okay. And where does that money go? It goes to DARPA, and it gets funneled into these other companies like Lockheed Martin and all these private companies. And they funnel this money into their programs. And why? Well, it's because of things like what are going on over there on the other side of the pond. We've got some issues. So where are they funneling this money? Into their programs, into their weapons, into their UFO tech, right? So I just wanted to hit on that a little bit before we move on.
I think you actually bring up a good point. And Grant, I want to start with you on this in regards to the idea that we are seeing this happen because there's a lot of interesting situations coming up. The Epstein files. Okay. We have the situation in Iran. The things between Russia and Ukraine seem to be getting worse, not better. There's a lot of things going on in the world. And then, of course, like you mentioned, Grant, the midterm elections that will be coming up as well. I mean, there's a lot going on. Is this a distraction move or is this legitimate?
I don't really see it as a distraction move. There's a lot of people who are putting pressure on Trump to disclose. For example, there's a file on Stephen Greer, so we know he was pushing in there, like from the FOIs that I filed, and a number of people like Republican senators and congressmen are putting pressure on Donald to do something. But I still maintain he got caught off guard in terms of what he said on the Air Force One. And that comes to this whole thing about the difference between documents and classified material. And I still don't see, because Jim Semivan points out, and he basically says he'll put up a year's pension against anybody who wants to bet him, that they really don't understand anything. All the psi stuff is right, but the UFO stuff they really don't understand. So to me, it's a situation where you're going to always have trouble if he does. I think he'll regret if he does make it open, because that's when you talk about these lawsuits. And I mentioned during the break, so a lot of people wouldn't have heard it, that Lockheed Skunk Works, who was the one that was going to move the craft, James Ryder was going to move the craft to Bigelow because they claimed they couldn't get inside it. They couldn't do anything with this craft. And Lockheed gave $10 million to the ballroom for Donald Trump. So you're going to have these situations where Donald Trump's biggest supporters are big, huge business guys, and probably all the guys who run all the big aerospace companies. And what are you going to do? As Walker said, when you figure this out, what are you going to do with it? And we've made these sole source agreements with contractors to say, we can't build a craft. We're the government. We don't know how to build a craft. So we're going to contract it to you to build the craft, to back engineer this stuff. And now you're going to go and take this stuff away from them. And they're the ones that are donating. And I just absolutely cannot see this. And you're going to have all sorts of lawsuits. Boeing didn't get it. Lockheed you gave Lockheed a craft and you only gave us, one of the windows out of the craft. This kind of stuff is going to go on because people know there's so much money involved in this whole thing that it's going to be very, very difficult with this eminent domain thing. There's all these problems that people really don't think about. Once you open this thing up, how many people were killed? How much money did you spend on this thing? Where was the money spent? This counterintelligence thing, were we being misled? How many people are lying? It's just a real mess of situations. And the problem is Donald Trump's going to face all these questions. And here's a guy who really, I don't think has been briefed, really doesn't care about the subject. And he's going to have to answer. And you know how he's going to answer? Just off the top of his head. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. It's a very difficult situation. I think that's why they've slow walked this thing so much. And the aliens have done the same thing. So the aliens aren't covering up. The aliens are covering up as well. They're both doing the same thing. They're slow walking this thing. And it has worked. So you take 2017, everybody said, the stock market meltdown, people would jump off bridges if it was known UFOs were real. And then suddenly you in New York Times come out and says UFOs are real, the government's studying them. And what happened? Absolutely nothing. And here what happened now is suddenly he's going to declassify and they announced that there's actually aliens. And what happened? Nothing. The story was gone by the next morning. And that's the whole thing, is that I don't think anything's going to scare people. And it may not move the needle at all, that you're just going to have these situations where people like us are going to keep asking questions, and people in Congress are going to keep asking questions, and they're not going to anybody else now. They're not going to go to Congress. They're not going to go to the Pentagon. They're all going to Donald Trump because he's taken the burden of this whole situation by saying, I'm going to release the files. And so he's going to have to answer for all the stuff that's gone on, all the people that have been killed, all the stuff that they've moved around, how much money they've spent, and under the carpet and stuff like that. It's just, I think it's going to be a nightmare in terms of this thing coming out. And yet there's been no reaction, almost no reaction whatsoever to this thing. It's been sort of viral on the internet, but in terms of, I watched the stock market. Stock market really didn't move today. I thought it would move on this Donald Trump thing, and it really didn't move. It moved on the tariffs, but not the UFO thing. So most people live lives of quiet desperation, and they could not care less.
Case in point, Grant, on that, Elon Musk says nothing on UFOs and never has. He's always denied it. And that's because he's got big contracts with the government.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. That's it's a difficult situation where the government taking stuff away from the contractor, or the contractor violating their stuff. It's there's so many things that have been tied up in 80 years on how they kept this thing secret, that to unravel all this stuff is going to be very, very difficult in terms of, especially the classified material. Richard Doty came out this morning. And did you read it, Nicole? You watch him. Let me read what Richard Doty said. He was very specific. He said, there will not be a release of classified information labeled special access programs or sensitive compartmentalization information. That's what he put. So, and I agree with him that they'll go to there'll be a war before they're going to give up the classified material, because the whole thing is the Russians. I said last night, the Russians must have had a party at the Kremlin with the vodka flowing that went all night. Can you believe it? They're actually going to watch the Americans unload their most top secret program, where the crafts are being stored, what they're doing, what the developments, how far they've gotten, and what's Russia giving out? Not a single thing. They're just going to sit there and take notes. It's just unbelievable. They've got to be just rolling in laughter at what's going on here.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, there is nothing that is going to come out that is classified. I think, and I said it yesterday, because one of the things that caught me off guard, and you guys know I've talked to our audience and to everybody in the UFO world till I'm blue in the face, that there is a difference between UAP and UFOs. And I was really shocked to see in Trump's tweet, or whatever you call it, on True Social, where he actually segregated UAP and UFOs. I see more UAP stuff coming out, man-made objects, secret. Maybe they're going to talk about drones. They're going to talk about hot air balloons. They're going to talk about that kind of stuff being declassified. I don't think we're going to get aliens. I don't think we're going to get UFOs. Nicole, what do you think when you look down that line?
Well, it's like I think I mentioned on the break, I think they're messing around with the lingo again. I think this post that he made speaks to Grant, like what he said. It's almost like he's uninformed. It hasn't been anything official. It's almost like he has these tidbits of information. Kind of like his first comments that he made when he mixed up Roswell and Area 51, I think is what it was. And it's just real off the cuff in his manner that he is. But what this made me think of really is I think Doty's most famous, for being Doty with Benowitz. And so when you put that in perspective of they were using UFOs as a cover, and then so his comment today, that jumped out at me. So we're never going to get anything that's classified because it's protecting something that's probably human made or integrated with something human made. And above all of that, all of this back and forth and posturing, they still really can't decide what ET is or NHI is or what the phenomenon actually is. So if this shift to thinking that it's something more spiritual, if that's what it really is, then disclosure's never going to happen from our government. They're not going to come out and prop up some sort of new religion that has technology interwoven in it and be like, let's weaponize it. Like, they're just never going to do that. Like, that's never going to happen. So if there's that comfy zone, they may admit to something that has been the UFO cover story, Grant, we like to dig around in the fact that crafts are alive, or like you brought up with Sarfati and Lukatsky being granted access to their craft and everything that implies. Well, what if that is integrated in, Lee, you brought up DARPA. There's all these crazy DARPA projects that kind of came up when Obama announced all the neuroscience studies that we were going to do and artificial intelligence linking with the human brain and mind. DARPA has projects about human interfacing with technology and UAVs, which is unmanned aerial vehicles. So we might get some sort of disclosure with that, but I don't think they're going to say, but we got it from the crash at Roswell. Like, I think we're even setting ourselves up for another Roswell explanation, like further than the mogul balloon and the dummies. So they'll just give us another excuse there. So
One thing we know for sure is when Trump goes off script, he says things he shouldn't say. So we can always count on that, no matter what.
Yeah. That's what the people behind him that have the cover up have got to be worried about. Anything that he knows. It's like he did the thing with the when they did the Venezuela thing, he talked about the discombobulator, the top secret discombobulator that they used against the Cuban troops. And it's like, and he said, "Oh, sure, it's top secret. I shouldn't talk about that." It's like they've got to be just scared to death that they tell him anything about this, because he's just going to bring it up, in one of his speeches where he sort of starts to ramble and talk about, all sorts of, that weird stuff. And that they've got to be really scared about this kind of situation that he's there. And yet he's the guy that's rattled the cage that it's not like if you were up against Obama or any other president where you basically say, well, we just walk around the guy. I mean, you're taking your life in your hands if you're going to try to walk around Trump.
Yeah.
he does like to steal people's thunder, though. And him and Obama have this strange back and forth from, when Obama was like, well, I've been president and you haven't. And then Trump was like, well, now I got to run for president. And we're all hearing about, the alleged speech that Trump, or comment speech that Trump is supposed to make. And we all hear about the rumors about June 2026 or things. And Grant, I sent you, Obama's library opens up June 26, 2026. So, maybe he's going to have an alien section in his archive. And
well, he's doing the movie with from his production company, doing the Betty Hill movie.
So maybe that was the speech that Washington insiders were hearing, like, these Obama whispers, but they wanted to brand it Trump, and Trump's rolling with it because he's like,
Yeah, I'm still waiting for Obama's FOIAs, and that's like 9 years now. And I've got the one with Tim Taylor briefing him. And there is a file on Tim Taylor, and there's a file on Chris Bledsoe. And of course, the connection is that the briefing took place.
The FOIA digging, I knew, and I told a person I would ask you, was it the Clinton librarian or was it somebody with Obama? I think it was an archivist that got really excited and wanted to dig into the UFO stuff with you.
That was Jimmy Carter's library. He had gone to school with Chip Carter, and he absolutely contended that the sighting did not take place in 69. It took place in 67 because he said he got out of high school with this guy in 67. He said the sighting took place way earlier than they were. So we were sitting there for 2 hours. So people sort of think that people in the archives are covering up. They're not the ones that are coming up to get instructions. Most of these people are just like geeky historian type people who are just so proud that they can work in a presidential archives. And they're just as honest as you and I. They're just trying to figure it out as well. And if you get these people, they'll find stuff for you that you didn't even ask for. And because a lot of times they're skeptical, and then they sort of get into it once you get going. And now there's going to be all sorts of people digging around in archives trying to find stuff.
Well, even with the Reagan Library, I was talking with another UFO researcher, historian, Jeff Knox, and he pointed out that even with the Reagan Library, like, they actually have had stuff donated back to them that they didn't have to begin with. So some of these archivists get really excited when they know they should have something, or there's like an opportunity to find something in a blank spot. So that's where a lot of this UFO stuff comes into play too. They do get excited to do unusual things as long as you're persistent.
Yeah. It's it's a lost art name, but now you got the thing with AI that you can move very fast with AI in terms of getting material and stuff like that.
So
and again, it's going to come down to, files really aren't going to really mean much because they're going to take forever to come out. And we got to remember that Schumer already did this. This is regulation already, that they are to turn in all their files to the National Archives. That was through the Schumer amendment that was added to the Defense Appropriations Bill. And so that's law already. It should be in the National Archives right now. So, and that sort of died. Nobody even remembers that even happened. And I think the same thing will happen here. It'll just sort of fade away. And that Trump will turn the tables on everybody like he did with the Epstein files, where they asked him a question and said, well, I was vindicated. I mean, ask the Attorney General. And that's what he's going to do here. Oh, ask the Pentagon. I don't know anything about it. Ask the Pentagon.
You better say ask Arrow. Ask Arrow.
Well, and that brings up my next question. Over the last since this all broke, we haven't heard a thing about Arrow. I mean, it's like they don't even exist. Lee, your thoughts that everybody has been silent about Arrow?
Well, I think they're stunned right now. They don't know what to do, which angle to take with this. This has just stunned a lot of people. I mean, I can see it on YouTube. I see it on Facebook. I see it on X. Everybody's just like, holy smokes, do we make fun of this thing right now? What do we do? Nobody knows which direction to take this thing. It seems like everybody that hates Trump is going to laugh about it, right? And everybody that is in league with him or likes him, is tooting his horn right now for coming out with this information. But Arrow is just silent because I think they're just waiting for the chips to fall, and then they'll try to pick up the pieces and go from there.
Nicole, what's your thoughts on that?
I think former Arrow director Sean Kirkpatrick was in a back and forth with Stephen Greenstreet, giving his comments. I know he's not officially Arrow anymore. And I guess my only comment with them is, they seem like they transition with their leadership and direction about every 2 years. And then they crank out another report and their new figurehead gives some interviews. So maybe we're in that cycle right now, because I think we are due for a report.
Yeah. And the thing we got to remember with Arrow is that even if you look at Lakatsky came in and basically said it's a front group. I mean, they were there as a PR thing like Blue Book to find out who's lying, or not who's lying, who's squealing, who's coming forward, who's violating the security oaths, and nobody will go to them anymore. So you're not getting any people, whistleblowers, going in to testify because everybody knows this is just a front group. And that's what I keep reminding you UFO researchers of. You always got to keep in mind that, as according to Eric Davis, there's 10 times the money spent on security as on the program. So what are they spending the money on security? You got to realize there's tremendous amount of disinformation and backdoor stuff. And you have these people have been doing it since World War II. They know what they're doing. They know exactly how it operates. And to think you're going to go up against these counterintelligence people and weed out the wheat from the chaff, I mean, forget it. There's no way. And that's what the last thing I said to Bill Moore when he left. I tried to get an interview with him, and he said we've been friends for many years. He said, if I couldn't figure this thing out, you're never going to figure this thing out. You're wasting your time. And there was this idea that he thought he could play the game. He could get on the inside. And he got totally burned by these guys. And that people got to remember, they spend a lot of money on security. This is the most highly classified subject in the United States. Beware of anything that's going on, and organizations, because they bring Arrow along and everybody thinks, oh, this is the second coming of Jesus. And then a couple of years later, everybody realizes this is just a front group to try to find out, who's leaking material and reprimand people and stuff like that. And it wasn't even intended for that. They use these things to gather material, almost like to get the CIA. So people will say, you shouldn't deal with the CIA. And I said, well, where do you think CIA gets the material from? They watch Nicole Sakach. What's Nicole Sakach doing? They watch Grant Cameron. Ron Pandolfi. He only followed 2 people on Facebook. One of them was me. And every time I comment on something, so why was he following me on Facebook? That's how they get their intelligence, is going to people that in the field and gathering material. And people don't realize this, that there's this massive amount of money in terms of counterintelligence and intelligence that's being spent on this program. And we think that we can walk around in this world without getting burned, and you got to be very careful of who you're listening to.
We only got about 45 seconds left before we have to go to break at the top of the hour. Grant Cameron, Lee Strauss, Nicole Sakach here for a great panel review of the latest UFO news coming out of Washington, D.C. And when we return from the break, we're going to get into whether or not this is the beginning of disclosure. That is the big question, because disclosure is apparently going all around the internet that this is it. This is the one. This is the break we are going for. Steve Bassett from the Paradigm Research Group has dreamt of these nights in wet sheets all over the place. Now we'll find out from the panel, is it disclosure or not? This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
It feels to me like Arrow's job originally was to bring forth all this evidence of UAP, right?
Yeah.
And now we have come to learn, because of everything they've been talking about, that their job is not to bring it forward, but is to hide it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So they're doing the exact opposite of what they were intended to do.
Yeah.
When did Arrow start? When was it put together?
Well, the first was that other organization they had. What was it called? The
UAPTF. Then it went to like OMISG, and then Arrow. Might have had another one in there, but I think 2021 is what I want to say.
A little while, yeah.
But
and that's where Grush was working, where he got his material there.
UAPTF.
So it started out as people who were really serious about it, and it turned out that it was totally infiltrated. And they realized that anybody who had any information was going to go through there, and we got to tap their phone. There's like a story that I'll be telling in a couple of days in an interview where Chris Bledsoe, where he was healing people in Maine, and he was showing me these emails coming from Tim Taylor, where Tim Taylor said, if you're ever in front of a hotel and somebody wants a healing, go ahead and do it. And I said, Tim Taylor said that? And he showed me the phone, and there's Tim Taylor. And then I was talking to a girl the other night to get the other half of the story, and they were in a restaurant with him, and they were going to ask for a healing. And they said it was like somebody else was in the conversation. They're showing him the phone with the messages on there. And then one of the people that was related to it, one of the boyfriends of one of these two girls, said to me that they were told it was a receiver phone, that Chris had been given this phone, and that it was picking up everything that every conversation he was making. But because that's the whole deal, they wanted to follow Chris Bledsoe. Who's Chris Bledsoe talking to? And people don't realize and I thought, that explains why Tim Taylor was on this because I couldn't believe it. I thought, is Tim Taylor psychic? How did he know that Chris was about to heal somebody in front of the hotel? And then this thing about the receiver phone came up that Chris had been, and I don't know if it's true, but the story was that it was a receiver phone. And I said, that explains why Tim Taylor was on all these things where Chris is healing this person, healing that person. Because the girl that I talked to, she said it was like there's the third person in the conversation. She said she was looking at, she wasn't reading the emails, but she's like, another one. It's like all these emails are coming in, and it's just bizarre. And that's what you see is they've got all this technology that you can't trust anything, and you got to realize that they're probably watching you, and whatever they're going to do, and you go ahead with your life. But I mean, it's incredible. They've got all the money. We got nothing, absolutely nothing, except a bunch of good ideas and a bunch of hard workers. But other than that, we got nothing. They got all the money, the resources, all the skills, everything that you could possibly want in terms of getting it. And it's the bottom line that Walker said that, why should we change the rules and regulations to satisfy your curiosity? And he was the head of weapons for the Pentagon at one point, the second in charge for the weapons. And, sat on the Defense Science Board and was chairman of the board of the Institute for Defense Analysis, where DARPA and Jason's came from. And he basically, to them, it's a business of war. And to hell with you. Who cares whether you're curious? Who cares? If you want to know, we don't care. When we get the GPS, the second version of the GPS, then we'll give you the first version of GPS. The bottom line is military gets the first crack at everything. And if you get in the way, they'll buy your patent. They'll stop you. And it's all about that. And you got to realize they got all the resources and all the power, and we've got basically nothing.
So it sounds like that Arrow's in the business of co-opting other people that are bringing out the evidence.
I don't think it started that way, but I think that's what it turned out to be.
Yeah.
And now that they're in a situation where nobody wants to go to them because it's a bottom thing where, like, don't go there because you're going to put your career in. Everybody realizes that if they are working for the government and you are a whistleblower and you worked on the program and you go in there, I mean, you could have no job. You could have, somebody sitting in front of your house tomorrow with the black car type thing. And nobody is going near these guys now. You got to be able to trust the people. But the problem is, if you're going to trust government, you're trusting the people who have other motives. The whole thing
I think that's split, though. I think it's half distrust for Arrow, but then I think a lot of it is Arrow doing its job and people not liking what they're hearing. Because, they expected 40 Grush level whistleblowers to come trotting out after Grush and after UAPTF. And that didn't quite come to fruition. And then the ones that we got are kind of shredded in ways. I know Arrow hasn't named names, but people have put together which cases that they think they have explained away in a rational way, or in a explainable way, I guess you could say. So
let me hold that
time
thought.
For Dave.
Coming back in 20 seconds. Thank you to Matthew. Thank you to Lori. Thank you to T-Bone for the super chats. If you haven't already, give us a thumbs up. It helps us with our algorithms on YouTube. Thank you to everybody tuning us in live right now. 273 of you, 274. Here we go, everybody. We are into hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We got a great panel in front of you tonight talking about the latest UFO news. We're going to talk about disclosure next with Nicole Sakach, Grant Cameron, and Lee Strauss coming on up momentarily. But first, we want to say hello to all of you listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Uranomancy. Uranomancy is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's bring in our panel guests, Lee Strauss, Nicole Sakach, and the legendary Grant Cameron, as we talk about the disclosure word, the big D word in the UFO world, because many are saying this is it. This is the one. This is how it all begins. And Nicole, I want to start with you on this one. Is this the start to any sort of disclosure?
I'll tie it back to what I said. I think this is a lot of hot air and a lot of excitement, maybe from our 2017ers and our newbies. And it is exciting to have not one, but 2 presidents talking about UFOs and aliens. I get that. It is very exciting. But I think we're still in that flux of what I was saying earlier. They don't know what this is, so they can't disclose it. They can't say it's extraterrestrial. They can't say it's been here the whole time and it's more spiritual. There's so many ifs and what's still left. They can't say that AI is NHI or alien NHI, or our AI is going to become sentient and be able to find the AIs, and we still have Elon Musk saying if there were aliens out there, he would know. And he hasn't come clean with anything. So I don't think we're getting any sort of big D or little d disclosure. I think we're getting a lot of hot air.
Lee Strauss.
I'm going to step back for a minute. So we were talking about Arrow real quick before we went to break. It seems like, it's simply put, that Arrow is trying to put Donald Trump, the genie, back in the bottle, or would try to. That would be their job, right? Is this disclosure? I think it takes a while, guys. It's not going to happen overnight, obviously, and it hasn't. It's taken 60 years to where we are now, or even a little bit more than that. But I just believe that we're not going to find out the information that we want to hear right away. It's going to take some time, and people are going to get in the way. They're going to try to get in the way. They're going to try to stop it, because that's their agenda. That's what they get paid to do. We see it all the time on X and Facebook and everywhere else that we try to post stuff. People try to get in the way because they get paid to be in the way, to try to stop this information from coming out, because they have people they work with that are in not just the military, but in the private work for the private contractors, and they don't want this information out because it hurts them. Not to mention, you're pulling threads. So you start pulling those threads, like I've said before, and what are you going to find out? That possibly ET was the person or the entity that seeded the human race. If that sort of stuff comes out, we're in deep doo-doo. I mean, what's going to happen to religion at that point in time?
Oh, let me jump in on that, because Grant likes to talk about his friend Chris Bledsoe, and that's just so scary to me with UFOs of God, and it tweaks all my Catholicism that, I'm a bad Catholic, and, that just the whole trifecta of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or, overlaying maybe channeling on top of that, or trying to say that Jesus was an alien. Like, that is just that's just it's cherry picking to me.
He wasn't?
And
Are you telling me he wasn't?
well, that's the same way I feel about undermining human ingenuity and building the pyramids. Like, yeah, I can still equate that there's a spirituality there. I don't want to say, and I think millions of my fellow bad Catholics would think the same, that they're never going to get their head around that Jesus was an alien, but they are more than welcoming to the idea of extraterrestrials and the chance to baptize them and teach them about Jesus and our spirituality. So there's those caveats, and that's even what I mean. I think it's kind of dangerous when we want to twist it into a religion. And then that even goes back to the old warnings that, ufologists are in danger of cult behavior and all that sort of stuff. We can talk about evil Scientologists later.
I am a Catholic, by the way. So there's that.
And there's a lot of layers there. We don't even get into Eastern spirituality, which is where I think a lot of it lies. And, we're not going to have a Buddhist president anytime soon. So maybe he'll disclose, or she'll disclose.
The idea behind it all is the UFO world has always taken crumbs and tried to make mountains out of those crumbs when it comes to anybody at any time speaking of anything. And it's been, in my opinion, a little bit of a downfall for such a smart community, because they are smart, but the passion sometimes overrides the level of brilliance that many in this community have. So my question regarding disclosure, Grant, is the fact that we know that there could be a cover-up happening. We know in the paperwork, as you said in hour one, whatever Trump put out there, it did not have specific words leading to disclosure or to actual files coming out, right? Even though he said, I contradicted myself. He said files, but there was no full disclosure movement on those files. So just your overall opinion, what do you expect us to see over the next week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 6 months, a year down the road?
Well, it's a drip, drip, drip thing. Like, people will say we haven't gotten anywhere. Everybody, like, we're living in the West, so everybody wants everything yesterday. We're very unhappy when we hear it's going to take years. But if you see the intelligence, whatever it is, and the government, you see this slow thing, and we are getting disclosure. Because I always ask people, what do you mean by disclosure? And what we have is the government. We know the government's working on it. That's been admitted. We know that there are crafts. Lukaski has said that we got a craft. We've been inside the craft. The U.S. government has it. We have the situation where we now know there's been admission of aliens. What more do you want? I mean, in terms of disclosure, and that's where the Walker thing comes in. The million and one questions. Okay, now we want to know, where do they buy their clothes? Where do they come from? All this kind of stuff. But it's a slow drip thing, where, as Max Planck said, science doesn't advance when you convince your opponent that they're wrong. There's going to be no time where they're suddenly going to throw the flag up. Even when you get full disclosure, there's still going to be people fighting it, that they really don't believe it. And what you have is a situation where now you go anywhere in the world and you can say Area 51. They know what you're talking about. You can say Skinwalker Ranch. Everybody knows what you're talking about. You can talk about near-death experiences. They can say, I don't believe it, but I know what you're talking about. And you realize that the consciousness is actually rising. And I say that in the end, what's going to happen is it's not going to be this physical disclosure. It's going to be this spiritual disclosure thing that's going to happen, is this consciousness thing. You see more and more and more people have started to get on the bandwagon now. They realize, and Lukaski's admitting it. I've got a whole list of high-level officials who will actually confirm, yes, the mind is a part of this whole process. And so that's the kind of stuff. I had a book. I don't know if we're going to put it out. It's actually finished. It's called Silence, where I call the case against UFO disclosure and the case for true disclosure. And that comes to this whole idea that it's not going to be the physical thing people think it's going to be. It's going to be this phenomena that used to be fairies and stuff like that. And now it's playing aliens, because we're talking about the space age. It will morph over time. It will change. We know this. And it's just a gradual process that more and more the young generation, if you take your son, Nicole, he wouldn't deny any of this stuff. He'd say, yeah, it's all real. And that's what Max Planck said. You don't convince people by showing them they're wrong. Science advances when people die. And it's like you stand down at the riverbank, and if you stand there long enough, all the skeptics' bodies will float by. And when they all die, the new generation is not offended with the idea. And that's where the idea came from. Science advances one funeral at a time. And I don't think this is any different unless Trump gives that speech. If Trump gives a speech on the anniversary of Roswell and says Roswell's real, then you could have some sort of big thing happen where he makes a speech about it. But right now, he's not making any speech. He's basically just talked off the top of his head and didn't realize what he was saying. And now he's boxed in a corner, and he's trying to make this move. But if he makes the speech, yeah, we're going to get some sort of thing, to disclosure. Otherwise, it's this slow drip thing. It started in 1974. When I started, they talked about the fact that there was going to be disclosure. In 1976, when Jimmy Carter came forward, Jimmy Carter came forward and he said he was going to release all the UFO files. And the place went nuts, and he became president, and all this kind of stuff. This has been going on every year. And we get closer and closer all the time. We know a lot more than we knew last year. It's incredible. Just in the last 2 years, the amount that we've learned, and that I've learned personally, about what's going on and how it may work is astounding. So I think we're making progress, but nothing happens overnight. It's always a gradual thing where suddenly it tips, and suddenly you realize everybody's talking about it and everybody believes it.
Do you think, though, that with the pressure from many in Congress, especially from the conspiracy club led by Anna Paulina Luna, Grant, that they are going to be taken seriously about trying to get these files. Nancy Mace put out a very elongated letter saying what has to happen here regarding disclosure, what they need. They need the files. They need people to be protected so they could come out and speak. Just a couple of examples of this.
Okay, but what you got to remember is the people in Congress only have a secret classification level. They unless you're one of the gang or one of the heads of one of the committees or something like that, you don't have a high security clearance. So you can go in a skiff. They still can't talk to you because you don't have the clearance in the skiff for them to talk to you. And that's one of the problems you have. And then you have they're putting a lot of pressure on these Republican guys. Are putting pressure on Trump. So that is helping, and they're bringing these sort of witnesses. And it's the same thing. It's like consciousness rises, almost like this idea with Hollywood. It doesn't matter what they say about you. It's just how they make sure they spell your name right. And that's what's happening here. It doesn't matter what's happening is there's more and more of this stuff, and some of it's right, some of it's wrong, whatever. But there's more and more people talking about UFOs all the time and talking about the congressional hearings and this sort of thing. And the congressional people, it used to be like you couldn't get a congressman to talk to you to save your life because they all, as the one person that was when Trump had this thing where Trump had sent Webster Hubble out to look for UFOs. And there was a White House reporter from the Post had asked in the press conference, she said, did Bill Clinton send Webster Hubble out to look for UFOs, the answer to UFOs? And then the guy said, no, we gave that to the alien. There was this Weekly World News alien. They said, no, we gave that job to the alien to make a joke. And then so she came back and she said, is what Mr. Hubble writes in his book correct about what Bill Clinton said? And then the press secretary said, I'm not going to comment on what private people put in their private books. And she said, I sat there and waited for the rest of the White House press corps to say something, and they all rolled over and played dead because they were afraid to lose their press pass. And that's what it comes down to. It's a slow thing that's building, and you figure it's going to break any minute. But the question is, what are you waiting for it to break? I mean, we already know there's aliens. We know they're here. We know there's these films. We know all this sort of stuff. And it comes down to this thing. Well, people want to know where they're from or why they're here, or all these curiosity things. And it's just 1,000,001 questions, which really don't have anything to do with the fact we've got disclosure already. We already know this is real, and it's all going to turn out to be right. We're all going to be right. All the skeptics are going to be wrong. End of story.
Lee, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people, and we talked about this before, but until the UFO and the alien land on the White House lawn and it's picked up by, how many news stations around America, it's not going to be real, no matter if it's Trump or somebody else that says it, right? It's got to be catastrophic for people to believe it.
Do you think we're going to go down that catastrophic disclosure road then, Lee?
I think eventually we'll get to that point, but right now it's going to be like Grant says, it's going to be the slow drip, drip, drip. The more information you give, the more people want to know, right? And it'll never be enough, right? Until that one thing that happens, a UFO landing on the lawn, or just, 50 news crews capturing something that's in our skies. Until that happens, it's going to be all this speculation and all these questions that are just going to keep, that we're going to keep hammering our government about. It's not going to stop.
Yeah. People are paying attention because Lukatsky talked about the fact that when he made the statement on weaponized with George Knapp, he talked about the fact that we had a craft. In the book, it said we got a craft. Reed was there and all this sort of stuff. He said nobody contacted him from Congress. Nobody. It's like I didn't say anything. And that's the thing. The stuff is all out there.
Well, and that's what annoyed me, honestly, Grant. So you have Lukatsky saying nobody's talking to me.
Yeah, exactly.
And so him and Colm ran OSAP, and then they tried to have their kicker ATIP that I guess Elizondo was ATIP. And then so we have our hearings with George Knapp, but then there's nothing about OSAP or, why wasn't Lukatsky and Kellner sitting up there with Knapp? Like, does that just make too much sense? Like, I don't know. Should we not be asking to hear from Robert Bigelow at this point? Or is it just because Brandon Fugel bought the ranch and we're getting some little sneak peek behind that curtain that we can forget about Bigelow now? Like, didn't he get the contract? Like, I have too many questions with these hearings and why they don't make sense and why they're smushing people together and all they're doing is talking about their books coming up or their movies. Like, who's next on the movie list? Which whistleblower?
And that's one of the problems. If you take it away from the contractors and say, we're going to take all your stuff and bring it back to the government, you're bringing it back to these people who can't run a hearing. Forget about build a flying saucer. I mean, if the people who are supposed to be able to build and engineers can't build it, the stupidest thing you could possibly do is take it away from them and bring it back to the government. It's like, and that's, I can't see Trump doing that either, or the Republicans backing that, because that's not their policy of reloading the swamp. Bring the crafts back and let the swamp creatures in Washington build a craft. I mean, that's not going anywhere.
So where's their craft? Lukoski's not giving it up. I mean, it's obviously not at Skinwalker Ranch. Is it in Las Vegas at Bigelow's big building there? Like,
well, I was talking to you about that that when that thing broke loose and it was this Navy facility, and Lou Elizondo had mentioned at one point, and you know all the names. There was a facility that Lou Elizondo mentioned on the East Coast.
I'll have to revisit my notes on that.
Yeah. So
in my retirement, I've forgotten.
But it's like George Knapp said. I mean, and that's where Obama says there's no aliens at Area 51. There never was. And
right.
And if you go to Area 51, they talked about the guy from the Senate Appropriations Committee going there, and they had the massive snowstorm where they flew him to S2, but you couldn't see your hand in front of your face and stuff like that, where they've tried to get this sort of stuff. But the minute the thing explodes, they've got so much money that if you find out where the hangar is, you can bet by that night it's all gone and it's in the South Pacific or something like that. I mean, you're never going to catch them. They got so much money and so much security that they can move this stuff anytime they want, and you're never going to be at the same location for more than 6 months at a time. Or the program name probably changes every 2 years. I mean, this massive security, it's like 7 or 8 layers deep in terms of what they're doing.
Well, that's part of the managing magic that I like to bring up in a nod to you, Grant. It is like you said. So as soon as we even found out, like OSAP, then there was ATIP, and then Arrow released Kona Blue, and so we know there's different iterations, just like, UFOs turned into UAVs, turned into UAPs.
Yeah.
And it's that dance of back and forth. And
it's hard to nail anything down. You take a look at you and I deal with Ron Pandolfi. I've dealt with Ron Pandolfi for 25 years. And I still say the biggest question in ufology is not what are UFOs, it's what the hell's Ron Pandolfi doing? I've followed him for 25 years. I still can't figure out what he's doing. It's like,
really?
I'm interacting with him and his wife, and I know all the friends around him and stuff like that. And that's what the whole problem is that it's so weird and so much illusion and counterintelligence that you can't get anywhere. Even if you know the right people, you can't gather anything.
Well, that's what I was saying. I think people's biggest problem with Arrow is that they have shown a light on the fact that the UFO cover story has been used as just a cover story. And then they conceded that the Air Force had their program, and maybe they didn't talk about that for a while because of how embarrassing it was and in depth. So, I mean, we've kind of suspected things like that all along, that maybe some of this is counterintelligence woven in,
Nicole,
in the 80s.
Nicole, what do you mean by embarrassing for the U.S. Air Force? We got about a minute 20.
Well, to know that they have purposefully been using UFOs as a cover. Like we hear some of our whistleblower or informants say, well, I was pulled into this project and I was led to believe it was UFOs. Or even how Rick Doty talks about he's being briefed on certain projects and he knows some information is total garbage and some is real, but they got to include it. How they brought this information to Linda Moulton Howe when they were diving in with her. They gave her real stuff and fluffed up stuff, trying to flush out her source. So I think knowing that, I mean, AFOSI was operating at that time in the 80s, using that as a cover story. They let Benowitz believe that he was getting UFO transmissions and it was all aliens. We also have this CIA purview to use counterintelligence and propaganda directly aimed at Russia and China. So, yeah, I think it's embarrassing that the Air Force fooled their own.
Hold that thought. We're going to continue with the second half of Spaced Out Radio's panel regarding UFOs, Donald Trump, Congress, and what is truly hiding. Is this the road to disclosure? Is it the road to more cover-up? We're going to find out over the next few months, but tonight we're going to continue with our panel for the second half of the show, coming up on Spaced Out Radio right after this.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, Grant, you got to get going here, boss.
Yeah, I got to get going. I got to be up early and hour and a half to the airport. So, oh, look at the cat. What happened to your dog?
He's still here.
Oh, that's good. We'll have to catch up, Nicole. We're chatting.
We do.
See what you've been up to in a long time. And Dave, we should do this again down the road because I'm sure it's just going to pick up speed. There's going to be more and more of these stories as we go along because everybody's got the sort of the figure they've drawn blood and nobody's afraid to move forward now. So I think you're going to get a lot of people breaking stories now.
It's all loons, crooks, and worse.
That's your book name. That's a good book name. Loons, Crooks, and Worse.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be some amazing times. My hero, my mentor, thank you.
Appreciate it. Yeah,
you. I love you, my friend. Okay. You are the greatest. You really are the greatest.
Okay. Now I'm famous.
Yeah, and this is where Grant tells me to shut the hell up and
yeah, exactly.
He reaches through the screen and punches me.
Okay. Talk to you later, folks.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Grant Cameron, everybody. We're going to say goodnight to Grant. And I don't know where little Timmy Seanor is. He was supposed to be here. I think he may have be coming in hour 3.
He had mentioned something about viewing a house or something.
No, that was filthy.
Oh, okay.
They're all Tims, unless they're a Lee. I did.
Hi, yes, no, maybe. How are you? If you guys want to ask questions of any of us on the panel, please, if you're in our YouTube chat, put your questions in capital letters. Okay, it's easier for me to read. My eyes suck. So please put your questions in capital letters. I will get to the panel. It must be focused on the topics that we're talking about tonight. So start throwing those questions in so that way I can start banking them here. Lee, we're gonna take the big guy Grant to Flight 21 a couple days before the conference.
Gonna have to, man.
You got your time off booked for it yet?
I'll have it booked by then. Not a problem.
Good. Are you coming up for how long are you going to come up for?
I'll come up for a week.
Good.
Just something here that I was looking up. So the original plan for Trump's speech was supposed to be September, and then it moved to October 8th.
Hold that thought. That's a good topic to come in on.
Wow.
Hi, Nicole Sakach.
Hi. I miss Grant already. Sorry.
Me too. He's flying to Montreal, though.
It's great seeing his face.
He looks healthy.
He does. Did you see Will came down with the cat? He snuck in.
I saw the cat come in. I didn't see Will.
He was there for a nanosecond. He just peeked in.
Oh, I missed it. I saw the cat. My boy has 2 hockey games tomorrow. And one on Sunday. I said, buddy, we got to be up at like 5 in the morning on Sunday. He said, well, what time's my game? I said, it's the gold medal game, 5 a.m. on Sunday. He's like, Dad, you're going to wake me, right? I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to wake you.
You need me to call from the Midwest and do a pre-wake up for you?
No, I think my dad is coming up tomorrow. So my dad's an early bird. I'm going to set like a couple of different alarms. I'll be up. It's funny. I could get up. I can't get up for work. I struggle to get up for work every day. But if it's something like I'm traveling or hockey or something fun, going hunting or fishing, I like spring wide open about half an hour before my alarm goes off. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm just going to get ready. Let's get this done.
Nice.
Okay, we're coming back in 5 seconds, guys. The second half of Spaced Out Radio is now kicked off. My name is Dave Scott. We have Nicole Sakach. We have Lee Strauss hanging on out here, hanging on out, talking about the UFO subject that is, was, and will be. We're going to get right to the panel right now. Lee, I want to ask you a quick question to kick things off right off the bat here, my friend, because of all this news that's come on, you've been investigating and filming UFOs for a long time. And I think you're very talented and very conclusive with your work. Well, as conclusive as you can be. You've all of a sudden started putting your stuff out there to the public. It's something that you've really haven't done before. I mean, you've put stuff out there, but you're now digging into your bag of UFO goodies and putting it out there. Why are you doing that?
When Obama came out, earlier this week and said aliens are real, and it was like, oh my gosh, this whole thing has started. Let me go ahead and release one piece of footage or one capture that a photograph of a UFO every day, and I'm just going to keep doing this. My plan is to keep doing this every day until Trump comes out and says whatever he's going to say. It's just something, it was almost internal, like, okay, we need to do this now. This is what we have to do. It seems like it's something that needs to be done. I don't know how to explain it. It's almost, it's almost not an intuitive thing. It's almost as if this is what I'm supposed to do. And I don't really have a lot more information than that, but it seems like I need to spread it everywhere that I have looked right now. They're talking about it. And okay, so what do I do is, a montage of photographs of craft that I've captured in the sky. And I'm just posting it everywhere that I can. And then obviously I'm releasing one video or one photo every day as well. So right now, it seems like we need to red pill people that this stuff is real. And if you go back and look, all the stuff I have, all the photos that I've taken and all the video, it's all taken way before AI even became a thing, as it is today. So
I think it's smart of you to do that. Because and I don't want to spend too much time on it. We got to get back to our original topic, But because of AI, it is going to be more and more difficult every day, not just weeks from now, months from now, years from now, but every day it's going to get more and more difficult to decipher real UFO footage from that of AI. And that
Right.
is a scary, scary thing, especially when it comes to our topics that we love here. But let's get back to the disclosure topic here and what President Trump is saying. This has caught the mainstream media all off guard. You know, they're now scrambling, trying to figure out this UFO stuff is real. Those tinfoil hat people are actually winning this conspiracy theory. I'm loving this because the mainstream media, Nicole, is just scrambling, trying to figure out how to cover this topic.
They're covering it poorly, like they always have, I will say. And I think if we're going to have disclosure officially, it's not going to come in a post online. You know, I would think it would be maybe a press conference that had press at it, not like a TTSA press conference. And I think the comments like Obama has said lately, like aliens are real. It would have been nice if there was some rapid fire follow up with that, you know, so there's not wiggle room. Like if he was meaning UAP, like how we have said UAP are real, they're here, something, you know, anomalous is happening. He didn't clarify that. You know, he could be speaking to, you know, finding microbes on some planet or meteor or exoplanet out in the universe. You know, it could be something one of our satellites has detected, or Hubble telescope. What's the fancy one? It's not Hubble anymore, but you know what I'm saying there. There's wiggle room. And I don't know. I just think it's dangerous. I think everybody, it started with Obama and his BlackBerry, you know, and being online in that sense. So to know that there's influencers and social media managers and public perception, this and that, around every hot topic with not just the president, but our other Congress people as well. So it's like Lee said, there's a lot of red pilling that needs to happen, but where are those people turning to get their information? Because one thing that I've been salty with all along was, Dave, sorry if this is a little mean, but ever since we encountered the disclosure crew with Canadian Disclosure and how they bucked the situation and then promptly announced that they were moving on from Canada to the US. And in those little behind the scenes conversations, really realizing that people on that level don't know the history of the own topic that they're supposed to be in leadership on, that's really bothersome to me. You know, it's just totally bothersome. If Lou Elizondo was orchestrating our disclosure, he should know just as much as I do, or Tom Whitmore does, or Kevin Randall does, or Don Schmidt, or Douglas Dean Johnson, or I mean, there's a million other researchers that I could name that they don't know the legacy. And so if anybody on the inside, be it Grush or Lou or Arrow, whoever's behind this, if they're now tasked to bring forward all of this information, then I hope they are speaking with actual people who have devoted research into this, not just, oh, I heard Roswell once when I was in some government job somewhere, so that's led me down a path of remote viewing. So there, that's all I had to say.
But on the flip side, coming from a media standpoint, it is good that they're talking about it. They may not be doing the best job at covering this story, because I think what Trump said did catch the media off guard. I mean, even when Obama, if you look at that time between Obama saying aliens are real and Trump saying what he said on Air Force One, there was a lot of laughter going on in the media circles, on television shows about, oh my God, people are going crazy saying Obama said the aliens are real. Where are they? Where are they? Who's going to get probed next? They were doing their typical, fundamental make fun of this topic
Yeah,
online.
right back to the stigma, right? And the
Absolutely.
laughter and the not taking it seriously. And I mean, it's almost like this is the big joke, so it can go away for another 20 years, right? Don't have
Absolutely.
to take it seriously. That Condon report shut down that this isn't really anything serious. And who better to hear that from than a president?
Absolutely.
Right. Regardless, there's Democrats and Republican and everybody else in between that wants this information out. There are plenty. Maybe we should look at the greater media outlets out there that are all laughing about this right now, even though there's so many of us that want this information out. And what are they doing? They're sitting back and they're laughing at Donald Trump about it because maybe he wants to bring it forward. Maybe that tells us something. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we should take a clue.
Well, maybe that's what it is. Okay, because they don't want to cover this subject. They don't know how to cover this subject. This subject for many in the media is very embarrassing. It's embarrassing that we're talking UFOs and, in their case, little green men running around the planet. They don't understand the intricacies, like Nicole said earlier, of how deep this subject really goes. Very few reporters have gone down that rabbit hole. So why would they, want to take this subject seriously when they're caught off guard?
Well,
reporters
and
have favorite topics that they want to cover.
And
Okay.
they've been laughing about it for the last 40 some years.
I can tell you this from a personal standpoint, and you're right, Lee, you are. Okay. But I can tell you from a personal standpoint, okay, when I worked in sports radio as a reporter, the one subject, and I've said it on this, if you've listened to this show a long time, you've heard me say it. Okay. I hated covering soccer. I could not take it seriously. In fact, in the press box, I was caught falling asleep during soccer games a couple of times, but I hated it. And so what I did when I was forced to cover soccer, I would just tank my job. I would tank my reports. How did you feel you played today? That was a good goal, wasn't it? And I would ask the most basic questions so I could get in and out of there as quickly as possible, then usually head to the bar and drown my sorrows away to get all that soccer grease off me. Okay. Reporters, when it comes to UFOs, are treating this the same way. They're not treating it with respect. They're not treating it as a hot button topic for as big as it could be. It's not, and I want to clarify this for a lot of our listeners. It's not that the media has like the movie Good Morning Vietnam, where Robin Williams wants to read the news, but they have the editors in there saying, can't read this, can't read that story, can't read that story, editing what they can and cannot say. There's not a single government official in any newsroom. It is 100% pure ego that these people do not want to cover this story. That's what it is.
Do you think they're laughing more now because it's coming from Donald Trump?
I think they're calling it for a cover-up. Whether it's the Epstein files, whether it's Iran, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, the economy, tariffs. There's a lot of bad stuff happening in the world right now. And a lot of bad stuff happening in the United States, according to some people. Okay. Everybody's divided on everything because we've allowed feelings to to take over judgment and critical thinking.
Mhm.
So, not that I'm trying to get on a political grandstand, but when it comes to the UFO subject, a lot of people that I've talked to in the last 24 hours believe that this is a cover up. There's too much going on, and they're
There-
trying to cover up certain aspects with this topic. Nicole, you've been quiet. What do you think?
Oh, I think everybody's just so frustrated and angry, honestly, because it's just still a lot of hot air without anything solid to back it up or without a second source. So, yeah, it's a lot of the same old, same old. And I think, not to bag on them anymore, but like the 2017ers or the newer people to the community or people within the last, let's just even say 10 years, for them to go through this exciting pushing the envelope cycle and expecting it to have a full follow through. I think the sour taste is setting in for them. And yeah, it's just not good. You know, we were told disclosure and we're getting books and movies. So,
But I mean, here you have, okay, here's where I think, Lee, you're trying to bring your point in. Okay. CNN today had Dan Farah on. He is the director and producer of the Age of Disclosure documentary that, many people are critically acclaiming, others are critically, critiquing it. Okay. Now, here he is coming out there and basically saying, this is what we've been trying to tell you in Age of Disclosure. This is what's going on, so on and so forth. But we also have to remind, this is a person who has never been really in the UFO world. He's never really done the studies. He just has the power and the authority to make those type of movies that could have the right people involved. So using him as some sort of expert in this field rather than a Grant Cameron or, like you said, a Don Schmidt or Kevin Randall or other people who've been covering this, who have the resume to put behind them and to back up their words, that's where we're going to be getting into, this whole tinfoil moment with the media again, Nicole.
well, I mean, if directors are going to be an authority on our topic, I would say Dan Farah should have bowed down and let James Fox make the Age of Disclosure. I mean, he was all in and behind the phenomenon with James. So why do you have to steal the thunder? I think James knows the history of our community a little bit better for a filmmaker. So just to fluff it up and then prance him around on television doesn't impress me. So, yeah, that's all I'll say about Dan Farah being a authority figure and speaking for our community.
Who should speak? If you were to pick a top 3 that the media should go after, Nicole, and interview on this.
I'm too skeptical to answer that now.
Oh, come on. Come on.
I am.
Put your
Well,
new pants back on for a minute. Who would you want to represent?
I'll be a bit grouchy. I'm tired of American journalists being authorities on this. It would be nice to have an American researcher from the United States, maybe get some airtime. Canadian secondly. So
Good save.
I don't know. I have too many favorites, but it's none of the talking heads, I would say. So
Grant Cameron.
Canadian.
Okay. Richard Dolan.
I'd take Dolan, I guess. Yeah.
David Paulides.
Nah.
What about Don Schmidt?
Yeah. I'd even take Kevin Randall.
Little Tommy Whitmore?
Of course. Yep.
Melinda Leslie.
No, we'd have to pass on Melinda.
Not because we don't love her.
Right. She's too woo, though. She knows too much about that other side. We're not ready for that. That's why, as soon as disclosure went remote viewing, that's when I knew it just wasn't going to happen. So,
do you think then, and you brought up a good point, the minute you just said, the minute they brought up remote viewing, that's where you said you knew disclosure really wasn't going to happen. Do you think then this is about getting back to what we saw in 2017 when the To the Stars Academy just came out, and they were all about nuts and bolts. They were all about propulsion, anti-gravitics. They'd had nothing to do with aliens. Do you think then, Nicole or Lee, let's start with you here, that we're actually maybe going to take a step backwards because the mainstream media may have to play catch up on what's been going on since 2017?
My thought was you always have to start with science in this whole thing. You have to start with the science because that's something people can grasp, right? It's real, it's tangible, it's what we know, it's what we understand. And then from there, you can start to introduce the possibility that maybe we don't understand the technology, but it is science. You know what I mean? And maybe it comes from somewhere else. So I think you have to start there with the science. And that's been my whole push and why I video and take photos of things that are going on in our skies is because I'm trying to show the science of it. I'm not trying to, talk about remote viewing or those other aspects of the phenomenon. Yes, I believe that a lot of that is true, but the science is where we start to bring people in.
The science will bring people in, but on the flip side, what is the science of UFOs? Because you could look at it from a physics side, you could look at it from a biological side, you could look at it from a human genetics side. There's so many different sciences to this. What science do you start with?
Well, the science, obviously, if you're taking photos of objects in the skies, is what's the propulsion? Why does this thing glow at night? What is going on? Why does this thing, as it's going through the screen, everything in the background look great, but the object is actually a little bit blurred? I mean, those sorts of things, you can start to break down what is going on with the craft and what is happening. Just by sheer fact of the way it looks in the photos and in the video.
Nicole, your thoughts?
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
Just in regards to the science of it all, looking into the science. What science?
Well, I mean, I think we always have to go back to the nuts and bolts, and maybe to just say the science of it is a little vague. I do think this belongs more in academia, so that opens it up to a whole array of where we could stuff this, not only, sciences or biology, but that puts it into psychology or so many other, like anthropology, like our friend Michael Masters, maybe theorizing that we are being visited by future humans or humans from our past that have gone so far away that they've evolved and they've come back, things like that.
That's the easy way out. That's the easy way out.
Well, there it is. And, it's also the easy way out to, say that this is all dimensional or in another reality. And it's also an easy way out to, just lurk around in ancient astronaut theories. So,
the big argument has always been that there's too much distance between other stars and other planets and where we are right now.
Right.
That's been the big thing. Oh, the distances are too far. We are talking about species that have been around for hundreds of thousands of years beyond, our lifetime, our existence on planet Earth, right? So it's really a nonsensical argument.
Right. Well, I think what started the argument in our modern era We like to say, 1947, and it was Roswell, and it was that crash. So if that's what kicked all of this off, that was something tangible and physical and, something we had on the ground. And I think being able to track that through the years or put that sort of weight on the physical and then have it morph into it could be this, it's linked to this, that spins it out. All of those things are interesting, but it still splits our community into two ways of thinking about it. Now, before we had Roswell and that crash, and you venture into even before like Kenneth Arnold land or visitations from our space brothers and sisters and things like that. Like,
Nicole, hold that thought. We got to go to break. Hour 3 with the panel is next. We're going to continue with Nicole.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott.
All right, guys, we're clear.
The pin in my thought is the early contactees
I'll be right back.
having
You guys chat.
the connection to beings, the downloads or the communication or the mind talk or, the waving at them or the landings or the visiting and the crafts, but it was never a crashed craft. We have a chunk of it. It was always, where's the evidence before? So
Right.
we'd get the pictures from Adamski or from whoever, So
Yeah, the whole
there's
word.
those sort of things. And where did that influence come from? Is it the turn of the century spiritualism mixed in with, new age hooey, as I like to call it? There's all sorts of things going on there. And, we are talking about like this rocket era and science fiction really, becoming such a huge genre. And
Right.
yeah, all of that is advancing on very real human things, though. It's writing off the industrial age and, pre-tech boom that we're in now, but it was still exciting times. And
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of red pilling that also needed to happen back then as well. We had science challenging religion and spirituality.
Yes.
We also had the rise of skepticism and that sort of,
Well, not just the rise
Yeah.
of skepticism, but you've got the rise of people that just want to make a name for themselves. You know
Right.
what I mean? And they'll come out with crazy stuff that is extremely hard to believe, right? But they're trying to get their niche in, and they, for the most part, have always got a book to sell, or they've got whatever it is that they're trying to get out there.
Well, a lot of that comes with the influx of the evangelical movement or the Pentecostal movement. That's a lot of folks traveling around and spreading their word.
Mhm.
So, my great grandma got swept up in one of these new age movements, sort of traveling through the Midwest, and she believed she was from the Pleiadians.
Oh,
So,
you're right. It did. Now that you're talking about it, and I can place that. I can place that. There are definitely those people out there that.
yeah. Well,
like-
so there's a back and forth. I think it comes with the times. I think right now we tout ourselves as being very scientific, but we are obviously, as a nation, searching for something spiritually too.
Mhm.
I see
Yeah.
that. I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna let my
Yep.
dog out real quick.
No worries. I will wait.
We're still just on YouTube though, so I'm gonna take this moment to say that, as far as the media is concerned, News Nation falls so short. And I don't even want to be mean about Ross, but he could do a better job and follow up on a lot of his stories and go deeper and, give us some secondary sources instead of just slinging the crap. So,
Yeah, the other thing about Ross is, and some other YouTubers out there that have come forward lately, and they have guests on that are just wildly unbelievable. And it seems to me like they don't vet the people they got prior to them coming on. And I'll admit I've had that happen on my channel as well.
yeah, you're not a journalist, though. I don't think you're
Right.
calling yourself a professional journalist, and you're not on a News
No.
Nation, whatever, being paid to do your thing. So I don't know, follow up or a correction to your stories might make sense at some point in time, especially if you get valid information directly given to you and then you don't follow up with a story.
Yeah.
I'm not salty about that or anything.
No, but I can tell.
Just so you guys know, in our chat room, even my comments are being censored by YouTube. And that's just for saying thank you for the super chat. I don't know what's going on in the chat room right now with YouTube, where all of a sudden comments are saying they aren't, or change your words up. That is not me or anybody of my wrenches who are doing that, just so you know. That is YouTube that is doing it. Tim Seanor is joining us. Little Timmy Seanor. There he is. Number 27 in your program tonight, starting on defense from Stockholm, Sweden. Lars Jansson has joined the chat room. And I want to say a big thank you to all of our super chatters. T-Bone, Lori, Matthew, Benno, Big Dog with a hat trick, and Jeff Steve Garvey, because he'll hit a home run for you with a golden glove in one hand. JMJ 12, nice to have you here. Want to invite all of you to Caribou Con, September 18th through 20th in 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. And we're going to have some great panelists. Lee is going to be up here. Grant Cameron is going to be up here. I will be speaking. Many people that you know. Get your tickets at cariboucon.com. Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We are in a panel discussion over Donald Trump's comments about UFOs and alien life. Man, has it been a wild, wild few days in our field. We're going to bring in the panel momentarily, but first we want to say hello to each and every one of you listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Uranomancy. Uranomancy is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as a clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. We bring back our panel. We have Nicole Sakach with us. We have Lee Strauss with us. And we're adding film documentarian little Timmy Seanor back to the fold as he joins us in the panel now. And with the discussion that's really going on here, it's easy to look at the negative side of what's going to happen. Many of us already feel that there's going to be a lot of redacted wordage out there. There's going to be a lot of news that doesn't come out. We're not probably going to find out about whether or not Roswell was aliens in a UFO or it was something more humanoid than that. It is something that we are going to have to transgress through over the next little bit. And little Tim Seanor, I want to bring you in here. So thank you so much for joining the panel tonight. I know you must be excited.
Hey, everyone. Big Dave Scott. Thank you so much for the invitation. Lee, Nicole, great to see you guys. It's been a really great show. Been listening in. It's wild times. I got to tell you, I am exhausted from dancing because disclosure is happening. This is like, for me, it's champagne and fireworks. You're not going to get anything better than this moment in history. For me, this is a touchdown.
I forgot how positive Tim was.
Yep. You guys nailed it. You know it. I'm just thrilled. And the funny thing is, it's been in the air. And to be honest, I'll get a little deeper, but no one has mentioned who I think the real hero is in this story, but we'll get to that.
Who's your hero?
Yeah, who's your hero?
I'm gonna hold off. I'm gonna.
Okay, well,
we'll definitely get to it.
Let's get to the point at hand here, though. What do we think we are going to see? Tim, you're the new voice. I'm going to sit here and start with you on this because I think there's going to be a big increase in the stocks for Sharpie after they get through all of this paperwork from redacting so much of the words. I mean, what is the positivity through this here, my friend?
Right. Well, I kind of disagree here a little bit on that. Of course, I'm going to come up on the other side simply because the first thing the president did was reached out to his first mate, Pete Hegseth, and Pete responded in support. The fact that we have the head of the War Department for the United States in agreement that these need to be done and done now sounds pretty proactive. I don't think this is going to slip into the cracks. No one is going to just let this fade off into the sunset. We're going to keep everyone's feet to the fire. And believe it or not, I do believe that Twitter and social media, or X, has really taken this topic over and kept people honest. You've heard everybody chime in on social media in one way or another within hours on this topic. And I think that right there says it all. Everybody's interested, everybody's listening. It's not fading away.
Twitter's bad ufology, though, or X, though. That's like the horrible community.
It's not a good place to go to for information. However, I think it's one of those things that people feel responsible, because it's one of those social platforms that keeps people kind of honest, if you will. That platform is not going to let this topic fade, in particular. There are others, but that's kind of what I mean by that. It's not necessarily that this is the place to go for it. It's rather, this is the platform that's kind of, keeping these topics afloat right now, if you will. This is where, people in government are going to first to respond before anywhere else. They're not going to USA Today. They're not going to the New York Times. They're going to their cell phone and expressing their thoughts and feelings within minutes of hearing news. So that's kind of what I mean as far as getting that information out to the public. I don't think we're getting redactions. I think at this point, we've already seen those redacted files, especially I'm talking to the person right now that has seen every file out there that's possible, Nicole. Your work is stellar. And so we know that we've already seen all the redacted versions of this information. What's left is the real deal. And I think that's what we're going to get.
Lee, what do you think? Do you think we're going to get a bunch of files when they finally do open up the files? Do you think they're going to be full of redactions, or do you think there's actually going to be some sort of information in there?
Well, this is the way I saw it yesterday, is that Trump would come out and say, you know what, Roswell was the thing. And because of Roswell, we got all these beautiful weapons, these powerful, amazing, wonderful weapons now. You know what I'm saying? How he talks, right? And he'll lead off with that the United States is the most powerful nation on the earth because we've got all these weapons that we made from UFO technology. And then, yeah, a bunch of files are going to start dripping out, just like the Epstein files. And you won't know what to believe and what not to, because a lot of that stuff that comes out, of course, is just someone calling somebody on the phone and say, hey, I saw a UFO over my house, you know, blah, 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 and not necessarily real incidences.
Right. I get what you're saying there. I think maybe an example of this is like papers we see from think tanks.
Mhm.
And they might give a threat assessment of a certain situation based on a whole array of their analysis. But just because that threat assessment was produced and published, it doesn't mean any policy or decision makers took interest in it or anything actionable because of that information. So
Right.
it essentially falls on deaf ears. So is there really a report? Is there a threat assessment? Yes. Was it taken seriously? Maybe not. And I think we're seeing a lot of that happening right now. And then so people that don't dig a little bit further take the threat assessment that no policy or decision makers carried any further or even requested further information on. And then they're building a narrative upon that, a narrative that includes credibility that makes it sound like there's interest and higher level things happening, but there's really not. Or not yet, because they keep taking swings at it, but nobody's like picking up that ball or running to first base. However, sports analogy I'm going to be terrible at. But that's the way I kind of see it. And I don't want to pick on any specific groups, but SCU, for example, there's some white papers floating around that they tout from people from Israeli intelligence or from BESA. And that's all it is just an analysis. And then there's no follow-up that there was anybody that took that information and made any decisions based off of it or implemented any policies because of it. And here we have SCU floating around saying, hey, this is valid. This showed interest here. This showed interest there. And it might kick up other scientific minds. I'm not meaning, that SCU is bad in any way, shape, or form in that. But it's up to us as the researchers and people who put out that information to be aware of the narrative that we're pushing surrounding that. We could say, hey, here's a really cool paper. Let's look into it, without superimposing this false validity behind it.
Right. So, looking at that, and an easy way to say this is that you're going to see 95% fluff and 5% substance.
Right. Which
that's
the
hard one.
That's following the pattern. I'm sorry, Dave, I cut you off, but that's the pattern we see out of every single group that's come forward since TTSA. We see 2 years of fluff and then 2 years of fizzle at best. So, sorry, Dave.
No. I was going to say the exact same thing that you said, is that, we're going to make mountains out of molehills in regards to this topic. My expectations of it all is okay. And it's been the same with everything that has come out, whether it's the hearings, whether it's to the Stars Academy, whether it's to all of these groups that say they have the latest and greatest technology coming out that's going to be able to find UAPs. Well, regular radar finds UAPs unless they're stealth. Okay. We're looking at UFOs here. That's what we want. Right?
How imminent is whistleblowing? How imminent is whistleblowing if it takes 10 years to blow that whistle? We're closing in on 10 years since 2017. 10 years of somber, imminent, it's coming, it's in the pipeline, next gear.
Tim, to get back to you here for a second, I mean, do you expect if they actually start to bring paperwork out and releasing the files, how do you think that's going to transpire? What do you see happening with those files? Do you see it really becoming mainstream news? What do you see coming out? Do you think it's going to be about UFOs and little aliens running around, or do we see it about more technology?
I think that they're going to give it to us in parses. They'll parse it out in chunks the same way we got all the files we've gotten recently. And I expect that to take place over maybe a few months. That would make sense, because it's probably going to take them a while to gather all of the pertinent information. And I think we'll get historical. I think we'll get some detail on retrieval and technology, and maybe even where it is and what we've done with it. But there's no point in putting it away at this point, right? Because we're all looking at it. We're all pretty aware of it. The public isn't in shock. And we're talking about whistleblowers, and I believe that an unsung whistleblower is the real hero of this story. So the narrative that I enjoy, in this and that I celebrate in this story is that, a few months ago, just around the beginning of just before the beginning of the year, a British filmmaker and UFO researcher came forward and talked about, a speech that he had knowledge of that would outline the US government confirming UAP encounters involving non-human technologies and would actually authorize full disclosure. And he detailed that fact, which I think is huge. That's a massive claim to make months ahead of time, right? So let's just hypothetically say that he made that up. That was something created just to hype his career and an upcoming film. Because that was my first reaction. I'm like, this is nonsense, of course, skeptical. But the reaction came that somebody grabbed onto that. Laura Trump suggesting that the president did have a speech. Now, it may not have been the same speech, but it could potentially have been something along the lines of something she'd heard. And so she brought it up in a conversation. Now the snowball's really rolling. Obama hears that, and he's like, hey, I heard something about this topic. Sure, aliens are real, but I don't know. And it's an off-the-cuff comment, and he the next day kind of backed it up and backed out of it because he was like, whoa, And now here comes Trump. We know Trump well. And he's like, you know what? I could get Obama out of trouble by just declassifying this, but who knows? And to appear again the good guy in the moment, because this is what he needs and wants and loves, he's made that touchdown throw and said, hey, let's give the public what they want. They're obviously into it. He sees the buzz, and boom, we're getting it. And I think we're going to get it all at this point, because what's the point in holding it back? Especially if it's in good hands, which we know it is. So my hero in this is Mark Christopher Lee, the British filmmaker that potentially released this information, got the ball rolling, and triggered, let's call it catastrophic disclosure. Sure.
Okay, you named him. I couldn't think of his name. So UK filmmaker, but you got to back that up, because he said his source was a Washington insider. So what the flippity flop is a Washington insider squeaking anything to a UK filmmaker? That makes any sort of sense?
Even further
that
than
doesn't make sense to me. That sounds like a single source echo chamber for misinformation that nobody backed up and tried to verify. And like you said, has snowballed into so-and-so heard and so-and-so heard and so-and-so heard.
Mhm.
So like I forget what's the scale called. It's like a way to like spot misinformation or bad news or fake news. And there's like 20 questions and you can scale them on 1 to 5. I'll send it to you. And it's like
It's
the
a
best
game of
way to
telephone.
spot crap.
It's a game of telephone. That's what that is.
Sort of, yes. But this is an actual quantifiable like scale on how to spot bogus, single-sourced news that you should follow up on. So we like to talk about algorithms and things like that. Well, like plug this one in because
I know who I'm talking to, and I honor the people in the room with me. I do, and I love this because
so a
it could go
filmmaker.
anywhere. Yeah.
But this also fits that dangle and that cycle. Grant and I talk about this. This goes back to UFOs Live 88, and he brought up Holloman Air Force video earlier. You know, there's always this dangle from an insider, Washington insider, with filmmakers. Like they're going to get to give the goods. Like that is a play. It's a play and a dangle. We've seen it for decades and decades now. So to think that you're not the filmmaker who's getting duped, I think you need to step back a little bit and see who's come before you. It's like Grant said, whistleblowers go to jail. Whistleblowers get the law brought down on them in some way, shape, or form. Something gets levelized against them, and none of ours have. And so why are these whistleblowers not getting arrested and then going to people like Grant or Stephen Greer or Jeremy Corbell and Knapp? And it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So, I mean, I get that journalists can provide a certain amount of protection. You know, I think Schellenberger did a really good job in the hearing of protecting his sources the way a journalist should. But you don't see Schellenberger out there like fluffing up his whistleblowers with 3-part interviews and stirring shit up online either. So I don't know. That's a fine,
I felt
is
like
woven.
It's a historical moment for a sitting president, to publicly declassify files.
Right. Well, where's all the UK whistleblowers? Where's all the Canadian whistleblowers? Why aren't they coming out and making movies about their own whistleblowers and the programs that they worked on?
We know why.
I don't know why.
Well, the UK is highly censored.
Okay. Well, so are we, apparently.
Well, right now in this moment, so that's why Nicole, I get where you're coming. You know a ton, and you know the history, and you're like watching it cycle over and over and over. But in this moment, we are seeing something that breaks that cycle, which is a literal public declassification of everything. He's written it out. It is done. That's a done deal. Like, so at this point, you can FOIA anything you want. Go for it. Right? Like it is a literal,
yeah. What did
like,
Grant say? How many FOIAs are out on Obama still? Like, I mean,
right.
The
As long as
FOIAs
it's
could be
UFO topic,
endless.
aliens, it's out there. And so, we will definitely see how it gets parsed out to us. I have leveled expectations. I mean, I do understand how this works, but I think we will get a version that will be satisfactory. I think we'll get some Roswell. I think we'll get some where they went. You know, they weren't at Area 51. Well, we all knew that, right? So that's a little confirmation, right? We know where they went. That's not a huge secret. So I think that we'll get that. I think we'll get some of that. And I don't think it's going to take much to satisfy the public on this topic, to be completely honest, considering we've gotten nothing, right? So, I mean, you're hearing my positivity simply because I do feel this is a historic moment.
Well,
10 years in the making.
That brings up an interesting topic, though, because in the end, we do want to see information keep flowing and information that comes out, but how do they actually bring it out? president coming out and saying this is what we want out there, I want them to release the UFO files, doesn't mean that we're going to get anything. It doesn't mean that top secret or highly sensitive or even above top secret information is going to be released. Me personally, I still think what we're going to get is drones and weather balloons. It's the easiest way out of this topic. At first, I thought that if the president did make that speech that was allegedly going to come on the 79th anniversary of Roswell, I thought it was going to be, ladies and gentlemen, we have picked up a signal. We've picked up a signal from Zeta Reticuli, or pick your constellation. And this is what we found. We found that it's not noise from space. It's not asteroids. It's not meteors flying around. It is a signal from what could be a distant human-like planet that fits in its area's Goldilocks zone. And we've got a signal from there. That's what I thought was going to happen. Now I'm not so sure. We're going to continue for the final half hour of the show. Lee Strauss, Nicole Sakach, and little Timmy Seanor hanging out with us, talking disclosure.
This is Spaced Out Radio, and your host, Dave Scott.
I have probably had about 30 messages tonight and last night and the night before so far that have YouTube has blocked my words. My latest one that got blocked. Hi, Jim Bob. Welcome to SOR chat.
What?
Yeah. It says YouTube rejected your comment. This usually means they think it's spam. Try changing it a bit. My goodness.
I see it on my end, of course.
That's because I've redone it. I have to redo it all the time. Now you'll see on this one it accepted. Jim Bob, welcome to our chat room.
Yeah.
Somebody in the chat said Nicole sounds jaded against ufology. I am, brother. I am right now. I am. It's not ufology. It's just disclosure. And it's all the crooks and worse running around my glorious community.
Didn't you hear the story where Trump was at Davos and he talked to a bunch of world leaders and they were all saying that it's okay to come out with it now? Like, go ahead and do it. We all agree.
I haven't heard that one.
You haven't heard that one?
No.
Okay.
Well, a couple months ago, we heard or maybe even half a year ago now, we were hearing the U.S. has to because China might or Russia might disclose, get out ahead of that stuff. Didn't hear that. We don't hear that chatter anymore. And we were hearing all I called it a Muamua number 2, but what was that second interstellar traveler that came really close? That Avi got everybody worked up about too. And, Carl Nell was saying that thing was approaching and whispering behind the scenes, getting everybody all worked up about that one too. And it's nothing. Yeah. So that's even what I mean when the leadership can't decide on what disclosure is or what extraterrestrial is, or even how the best way to disclose this is. It doesn't matter what Trump says or Obama says. It's just going to be a glib. It's just going to be that.
Well,
until there's follow through,
what they believe.
Follow through like we got with those Epstein files and the JFK files, and the list continues. It just makes me so blah. So, and that could all change with the next administration. Have we heard any new information on what they're going to try to get into the next Defense Authorization Act? Are we defeated? Are we not trying again? Where's the language?
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, Mike Turner will be right there to try and shut it down again.
Regardless, the conversation is moving forward. Even if it's going horizontally, at least there's that talk going on.
Lee, you got a pencil? You got a pen next to you? Because I was going to tell you in my trifecta of hunting this down. So, and I've only shared this with Courtney, so keep it between us.
Remember, the entire audience is listening.
What? So, I didn't name names earlier, but so you bring it up and you have, where could the scientists be, or where are all the people with these degrees going to school, or where are they coming out of? So one that we started digging around on was, is it Stony Brook? And then you got to look into the Medallion Fund, which is where the stock market money might be coming from. So there's like a nice little interesting trifecta of information that I can send you there. And it ties into what you were saying about DARPA and different projects as well. So there's lots of rabbit holes to fall in there. And
I've heard of Stony Brook before, so.
right. Yeah. And so, and then Stony Brook or Sunny University. And then you have Brookhaven Laboratories that's up there. And then you have the Medallion Fund. So that's your trifecta right there to dig into. And then you can see how they kind of overlap. So if you were like, oh, well, I see the students are working on this here, but then a lot of these students get inducted into the Medallion Fund, and then a lot of them end up at Brookhaven or farmed out to these other projects. So then you can see where the science overlaps and how some of that could be our technology that we're searching for.
Hold that thought. We're coming back.
What thought? I didn't have any.
Here we go with the final half hour Spaced Out Radio. Hopping into our panel right off the bat. Tim Seanor is here. Lee Strauss from Element 115 and Nicole Sakach are here discussing the latest UFO news. I want to get into Roswell because I think this is kind of important to this subject. We know that after or near the end of Donald Trump's first term, he was interviewed by his son, Donald Jr. And the final question asked was, are you going to release what happened at Roswell? And Trump sheepishly said, I don't believe anything. You know, I've talked to some pilots about it. They're really, really good looking pilots, you know, really good looking. If that didn't make you laugh, I don't know what wouldn't. Right. But he basically said, I don't think so. I don't think there's nothing there. You know, he played it off. And now we hear that Laura Trump and Eric Trump are big fans of what's going on in Roswell. They've been following it. Roswell seems to be a big topic of discussion in the Trump family circles when this topic comes up. Is there a possibility, Lee, or what do you think is the possibility that this may all stem back to Roswell?
I don't know if that stems back to Roswell necessarily. The thing is Roswell is so easily identifiable when it comes to the UFO subject that everybody kind of knows the history there, the mystique about it, and all of the, not all of the nuances, but you know, they basically know what happened. So I think it's an easy spot to go back to and say, you know what, that happened. It's real. We just kept it under wraps. That's my thought.
How about you, Tim?
Yeah, well, I think the fact is that he had supposedly had this speech prepared for the celebration of the anniversary of Roswell has something to do with it. And he probably in his mind figures that everyone that's associated with it that could complain about it being brought forward isn't around anymore. So who's to complain? And he is the kind of guy that thinks that way. And so this is an easy card for him to play. And it's also one that's going to kind of bolster perhaps his credibility. You know, being that guy that knew about it, can bring it forward and tell everyone finally the truth and settle it. Let's just settle it, you know. I think it's great.
Nicole Roswell, I know you love the Roswell topic.
I do.
Take away your loathing and hatred for the UFO field right now. Okay. Roswell is a story I know you love.
Sure. But okay, I'll say this. So if this is all coming back to Roswell right now, then what I will say is, what does Roswell mean to certain people? Because, like Tim, you just said, okay, well, it's safe because everybody's dead now. So, true, like the original witnesses have all dwindled and lingered. But I think if there is a place for Roswell in this right now, it's rooted in the beginnings of when we started to find out about Roswell and Area 51. And that is in the work of Bill Moore and Kevin Randall and those original Roswell researchers that were bringing this to light. And then so we have 2.0 with Roswell in the 90s when Rockefeller saw it as our best hope for disclosure, the best documented to that point we could get answers. So that's a double whammy because the 80s is kind of like the beginning of our modern UFO cover-up, you know, in the essence of Bill Moore came out and with Doty and Bill, or I'm sorry, not Bill, with Jamie Shandera, unleashed the MJ-12 legacy and the bird legacy on us. And Moore admitted, you know, they used him because he was a researcher, because he was prominent with his Roswell work. They used him and he let himself be used because he wanted to be on the inside and expose all this stuff. So we have that root in our current history that Roswell is a part of this known current legacy cover-up that goes back to these documents that span the 80s and 90s and murkies and muddies our waters. And then just for the final kicker with Roswell is we still have Colonel Weaver. He's not deceased. He's very much around. And maybe people don't remember him by name, but he is the man who stood up and gave us the mogul balloon. He's the one who was tasked to investigate Roswell when they gave us that excuse. So that was kind of their double whammy, nail in the coffin with Roswell. And then with the kicker, they gave us those crash test dummies, which we blow holes in all the time and throughout, you know, our decades. But it still leaves us where we're at today with Roswell, wrapped up in conspiracy, overlaid with the counterintelligence and researchers making up code names and playing a spy game and filmmakers trying to turn it into a film. So is that the legacy of Roswell? Is that the legacy of disclosure? Are we just reinventing our wheel or slapping some makeup on a pig? I don't know. Probably all the above. Did I answer your question?
So in other words, it wasn't aliens. It wasn't deformed Russian children. It was crash test dummies.
And a mogul balloon, if that's the official story. So is Trump going to contradict that, is what I'm saying. I doubt that. They don't like to go back and say that investigation that we investigated and spent so much money on and gave you a direct answer to is completely crap. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. So
My opinion on it is this, and I look at the way Stanton Friedman, the late Stanton Friedman, investigated Roswell thoroughly as a nuclear physicist. This guy knew what he was talking about.
Mhm.
And he still was convinced that there was 2 crashes that day, that the 2 UFOs collided. One went into San Augustine and crashed there. Gerald Anderson and his family found that UFO while agate hunting. And the other one crashed in Corona, which somehow got the Roswell name for the Roswell incident. Now, if that did happen and the 2 did collide, then we are looking at a situation that there's 2 crashes, one being covered up, because the majority of Roswell researchers never bring up the San Augustine crash. Majority of them don't even know about the San Augustine crash. That being said, I know a couple of you, and maybe some of our listeners, not a fan of Lou Elizondo, but he brought up a good point to me one day when I was asking him about Roswell. And he said, Dave, you don't bring a triaxle flatbed trailer for a Mylar balloon. That's a heavy duty trailer. You don't bring it there for a balloon.
He borrowed that from Kevin Randall or Don Schmidt or somebody else. Yeah, he totally did.
I'm just saying what he told me. And it just made sense. Right? So I think there is more to Roswell. And, you know, unfortunately, to steal Nicole's term that I love, the 2017s barely know about Roswell. Okay, their Roswell is the 2004 Nimitz incident, which is proving more and more seemingly to be UAP, not UFO, and potentially from facilities out in the deserts of Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona that were being tested.
Right.
So I think the big debate right now is Roswell now the key to all of this if Trump decides to go further with this? No, you don't think so? Lee, go ahead.
You know, on that, Nicole's partially got something going on here that I agree with. Absolutely. Obviously it's something that's been played out, and it would be easy for the media to laugh at it, because how many times has this been explained in different ways? So many times. It's ridiculous. Maybe 5-6 times it's been revised now. So I do think that if he does say that, it's possible that they could just turn around and laugh at him and say, hey, you know, we know the truth. You know, the last report was the true thing, and now you're just, you know, blowing smoke up our butts or whatever. It is possible. Yeah.
The caveat I think I could lean into if I put my woo hat on and become really hopeful is if Trump would somehow back up Philip Corso and the spreading out of possible technology. But that could still lead that it was an extraterrestrial technology, that it was Russian or Chinese or an adversary, and it's a cover-up. But I think little caveats like that could possibly come true. But I think our version of what we think Roswell won't be the make it or break it thing. And yeah, most people don't realize that Roswell was 2 crashes, but that whole area is blanketed by like 5 crashes over several years. So like 47, they didn't find the second one from that night until 49 is kind of how the story goes. And then you have St. Augustine, and I think the Aztec crash is considered part of that, as well as Kingman, Arizona. So there's a whole history of crashes in that Roswell area that span some years that, you know, maybe need to be unpacked more thoroughly than just Roswell. So
let's get Tim's opinion on this.
Yeah, and there are so many potential files that could be released, right? Because there's many stories that could be released from that Roswell incident. But I'm going to be super surgical again on what I think, and as far as how this is going to be changing things on the topic, is simply because political counteraction. Trump criticized former President Barack Obama for allegedly sharing classified information about aliens and used the opportunity to order the disclosure. Now, the classified information that Barack Obama said was that aliens are real. That's it. That I don't think we should overthink this. The fact is, that's the story. Whether it's Roswell that we get that information from, or images, or a crash that we don't even know about, that information is what we are looking for. The confirmation of extraterrestrials, and that was the information that Barack Obama leaked. So yeah, he's going to want to do transparency on UAP incidents. He's going to do, he's into addressing the long-standing theories that are out there. He wants transparency and public interest, obviously, because Trump cited, quote, tremendous interest in the topic, remember? And as a primary driver for the release of the files, indicating a response to the public's desire for the answers, right? So he knows the public wants this. He's looking for a little bit of public support. He knows there's tremendous interest. He's all about transparency for this topic. I think he's in support. I think we're going to get some alien real, like realness. That's what I expect.
And that's why, Tim, I kind of bring out the Roswell situation here, because now his family members are talking about, his immediate children are talking about Roswell. You don't hear them talking about Kingman or Kecksburg or San Augustine or even the 2004 Nimitz incident. It keeps going back to Roswell. And I hate to, beat a dead drum here, but that could be the cog that starts to turn this wheel if we look at it on a positive light. So I guess what I'm saying is that is something for us to watch. What else should we be watching for in the next little bit here, Nicole?
Well, I think our expectations just shift so fast right now that I can't really say anything to expect. But what this does feel to me like a little bit is sort of that Jimmy Carter situation we had ourselves in, where, he wanted to allegedly disclose UFOs, but he inadvertently disclosed our stealth program. And so that's really what the mix-up was. Or I even think of like the whispers about, was it Nixon that showed the bodies to somebody? Like these friend groups around these people seem to have a whisper brigade about them too. And so we do catch those kind of stories. And so I think we're kind of in that similarly with Trump. Like we know his son had interest, and now a daughter's showing interest, and we don't really know where their information's getting sourced from or who they're paying attention to and what they're necessarily following. So, that's kind of a scary situation in itself too. But I think in maybe modern terms is Trump maybe covering for Obama in some way? Like, I don't know. Like to even say that what Obama said, that aliens are real, like that's the classified information that he exposed. Like, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that's hopeful, and that's being fluffed up a little bit as to how serious it could be taken. So I don't want to put the baby out with the bathwater, in any sense, but I just think it's safer to wait and just hold fast and not get caught up in the hype of all of this. Because as of now, it's only coming from that one UK filmmaker, Washington insider source. We don't even know what kind of Washington insider they're meaning. You know, is it an aide? Is it a contractor? Is it a lobbyist? Is it a journalist? You know, who's that Washington insider? So that says a lot to me if there's not secondary sources on something. And I've even gotten caught up in that myself as well over the years and decades. So you just have to stay diligent and keep circling back to those little things that don't make sense. I think
Dave,
that might be something to look forward to.
May I ask a quick question?
Sure, go ahead, Tim.
So when the president released his decision that, we could see it was kind of churning that this was happening when he was talking about it, being interviewed on Air Force One. And you remember that interview, I'm sure. And then the press secretary's standing behind the president. And I think we all probably caught her smiling response when the president was asked about this topic. So what do you feel her insider information, obviously she knows what's going on this topic. What do you think her smile meant when the president was asked about this?
I think it's what their smirks and smiles and little giggles always mean. It's like, I can't believe we're talking about this.
It's not what I read.
No.
That's not the feeling I got.
I didn't see it. I did not see it. Just the way Tim described, that's what I would say the smirk is about. But
no,
I don't know.
It seemed like she was genuinely excited that this question was asked. And it's like, oh, here we go. What is he going to say? You know, she was genuinely seemed thrilled that this question was asked and that Trump was going to say something about it.
Yeah. And she even went on to say how she was, both her and Eric were pressing on it to him. So that's what makes it a little bit more fun and tantalizing, shall we say. We never get to use the word tantalizing on here. So I'm going to use that word right there. We've got about a minute to go. We did a poll in our YouTube chat. The question was, will we get anything relevant in the UFO files when they come out? 61% of our audience says no. We're not going to get anything. Not to sound negative, but it's better to be cautious and potentially optimistic than throw all of your money on green on a roulette table only to have black or red hit. So it's safe. I want to say a big thank you to just an outstanding panel tonight for our UFO special here on Spaced Out Radio. Grant Cameron, who had to leave after the first half of the show because he has an early morning flight. Nicole Sakach from the Weird Desk. It's been way too long since we've had you on this show, and tonight really made me happy having you here, so thank you. Lee Strauss from Element 115. You are the man, the myth, and the legend all rolled into one. And Tim Seanor, thank you for coming in for hour number 3 on this show to give your insight on this incredible topic. Now it's just a day or two or a week or a month of waiting, and we'll be on top of it right here on Spaced Out Radio. Thank you, everybody, for tuning us on in as we say hello to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Rocket in the background with Little Brother is watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Rocket us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at work, at home, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAF, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club, and on X at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and Bigfoot Broadcasting Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
we own the night.
Mr. Bumblefoot. we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night, but soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night, everybody. For the record, in case you're new here, wondering why Nicole said we own the night instead of me, that is tradition when she's on the air. That is SOR history right there. She is the only one who is allowed to do that. Right, Nicole?
Hey, I follow instructions. The first time I was on, you said, "Together, my friends." And then you gave me a cue. And so I answered. That's how that went down. And yep, I've got to do it ever since. So
only you.
Hey, I do want to just remind everybody too that Grant Cameron's really the only one that releases any kind of UFO files.
Ooh.
And I'll say John Greenwald and all his FOIA, you know, he digs out the stuff. But I mean, when you think about who's released what, you know, name a document, and it's usually tied to Grant somehow. Now, if you want to go back to those MJ-12 documents, then they have, you know, notorious people behind them that aren't Grant. But since then, the documents of the last, we'll go with 9 years for right now. Yeah, Grant. So let's see what Trump can release that Grant hasn't tried to already. How about that?
I say we just go for it.
And why don't we have our SOR 2026 party in Illinois and go to the Obama Library and just, you know, dig for UFOs?
Read the UFO wire. Hey, Tim, are you ever going to unmute, or are you just going to sit there all quiet?
Oh no, I'm just chillaxing. You guys are great. It was really hard to follow Grant. It's like coming on after Jerry Garcia. It's like, what do? There's nothing to play. But it was, yeah. I mean, forget about it. It's
you just jam. That's what the Grateful
just
Dead is
jam.
all about. Is they're jam fans. Like, what do you mean after Jerry? You just keep going after Grant.
Well, we also have to remember that Grant is not just Grant Cameron. He's Grant effing Cameron.
Ooh.
Right?
The Ascended Master.
That's right.
The UFO Podfather. I absolutely am excited though. It does feel a little different. We didn't have a sitting president. Like the other presidents talked about it either while they were still either governor or after they were president. There was never a sitting president that had the power to declassify anything. So this is why it's cool. Like Carter missed his shot and Reagan, obviously. Like there was never a president that really had this shot. And the current ego on our president is like where it's at. And I didn't think this a week ago. Like I would never have said these words a week ago. But I think
I will go on with Walter right now.
What?
Okay, so Carter whiffed it. Reagan
Sure.
layered it.
Thank you.
And then Bush 1 was like, I ain't even touching this topic because I know too much. And then Clinton was like, they burned the files. And then Bush 2 was like, I ain't even telling my daughters.
Hey guys, I got to run here because I have to go on WABC in New York right now. So I've done Philadelphia, SOR, and now I'm going on in New York on Red Apple Radio, WABC. So if you want to join me there, you can. I'm going to just turn my speakers down and my microphone off while I'm doing this. So if you guys want to stick around, you can stick around.
Dave's getting ready to join WKRP in Cincinnati. I like it.
Man.
He's going
That was a
to
great
do the
show.
hog report for Les Nessman.
Best show
Hey,
ever.
Lee, if you want to just take control of the board, and if everybody just decides to leave, just end the stream, that would be cool.
I'll do it.
That's why you demand. You guys just talk some UFOs.
Lee's in charge.
Gatekeeper right now.
Did we do audience questions? We didn't even do any audience
Oh.
questions.
What the heck?
There was
Let's take a
one.
look.
What are the UFO ships run by? Do they have plasma generators?
Oh. Which ones?
Gravity. Yeah, which ones? There you go.
I think there's several competing ships out there. Not to bring up Star Trek, but Jack Sarfati likes to talk about warp drive.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got the warp bubble ones, the antigravitic ones, the ones that fold space-time, the ones that are alive, that are grown, that are their own thing. So, yeah, lots of theories.
Yes. Yes. And, there could be a mix as well, right? The ones that are grown could also have propulsion systems similar to other ones. You never know.
Yeah.
It seems to me that some of the photos that I've taken led me to believe that because of the atmospheric lensing that's around the object, that they're definitely in some sort of a warp bubble.
Mm. I like saying that word, but we really don't know what that is.
Right?
I like the warp bubble.
It's where they collapse space behind the craft, and then expand it in front of the craft so that they are basically falling through a huge gravity well.
Right. Sarfati kind of describes it as being pulled along the gravity falling. You follow it. And so I don't know to say if it's forward or backward or how it moves, but but it definitely slips through. And then some people, Jim Peniston, I think called it the sphere of influence that is around a craft. So I've seen those distortions and it's cool. So that's why even I think it's Valet has said that's why we'll never get that crystal clear picture, of a UFO in all its amazing glory because of that sphere of influence. So
yeah, the one photo that I took at Mount Baker is really weird because the direction that the craft looks like it's going, the front of the craft actually looks like it's dipping down, and behind the craft it actually looks like it's lifting up, and it looks like it's in some sort of a warp bubble, like being pulled, like you say, or falling forward, but and then the back collapses behind it, creating that effect. Yeah.
I think when we old school Star Trekkies think of warp, and they still think of it as something going forward,
or being stretched almost. Yeah,
right, stretched. Maybe the newest wave of Trekkies, and they have the whole their mycelial network tardigrade and how it spins and then appears. I think that's a new rendition of the warp bubble, but it still doesn't encapsulate what Sarfati actually describes, which I like referring back to him, obviously. And of course, I think, he's been at it a long time. But, I don't think it really accounts for everything that we're seeing in the sky, though. So it's interesting. If there are occupants, if there are true occupants and crafts, I think they're
Oh.
still different, like the way Lazar described.
I
Seems
can
that
actually pull the photo up for you right now if you want
Yeah.
to see it.
I love photos.
Okay, hold on a second. Let's see. Oh, that's screenshot. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this down real quick so you can look at it. Okay, now there you go. So yeah. What was that you had said? I'm sorry.
Said it's definitely a balloon.
Oh, that's a balloon. Yeah, that's right. It's
No, that's really cool though. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a mylar balloon. I've caught some similar things. My second big like daylight sighting, I had other people that sent me in photos of what I took a photo of, and one of them was really cool because it had like this thing that looked like a solid orb in the middle, but then it had this white puffy thing like almost surrounding it too, like yours just showed. And yeah, like I compared that thing to whatever I could get my hands on, and couldn't ever find something that matched exactly. It was so weird to capture it on camera like that, but then to not see it appear that way with your actual eyes. That's what I
yeah,
thought was weird.
that's the thing too. Yeah, and obviously our eyes see at a different frequency than the snapshot of a camera or even recording video. So it's those difference in frequencies that can make things look differently than what we saw, slightly or more so.
Tim's captured some crazy stuff on camera and film. He got to
Have you?
camp outside those ranches.
Oh.
At least I think he got some good stuff, or I was hoping he did. He got to play around out there.
I'm actually not able to hear Nicole for some reason back here.
You're
Oh
not able to
no.
hear her?
I'm not able to hear Nicole playing in the back here. I can hear you, but not Nicole.
Oh
I
no.
can hear her.
Weird.
Weird.
I'm having to play it through YouTube to hear her, but I have captured some really cool stuff, and I wanted to kind of tie it into this question because one thing that my family experienced that brought me into the topic. So I'd never researched or knew anything about UFOs before 2019. That's kind of part of my story, is I'm definitely new to this, right? But what we saw didn't fly across the sky so much as disappear and reappear somewhere
Uh-huh.
else, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, there was like a little bit of a haze around whatever it was, but I have no understanding of what that technology would be. Like, is it just so incredibly fast I'm not seeing it? Or is it literally phasing in, phasing out, and that sort of thing?
A lot of people say that if you record the sky at like 220 frames a second, you'll capture a lot of things that are moving extraordinarily quick that your normal camera would not capture.
I can get behind that.
And
Yeah.
so you're thinking a high-speed camera could potentially capture things the naked eye can't see. So it's still
Yes.
flying and moving in our airspace. It's not disappearing and reappearing necessarily.
Correct.
Interesting. Um, Nicole, do you think it's possible that things are actually like multidimensional and like phasing in and out of a dimension, maybe like not necessarily flying from somewhere else, but like just popping in, like whatever? I don't know
I
what
I
that
tend to
technology
lean
is,
that
but is
way.
that potentially how they get here?
I tend
Oh
to
man, I cannot hear her at all. I don't know why. I'm gonna turn my microphone off and I'll turn YouTube up so I can hear.
I was saying I tried to talk closer. I tend to lean that way. Not for anything solid other than it's probably my gut and what I want to think or try to understand. Um, I think we're still a long way from proving those things are possible, but that's where I do slide my woo hat on and try to interpret what my fellow experiencers discuss when they try to sort these things out amongst themselves. So, I think this is where that mystery science is for me. Like, we still don't know what we need to know to even study, so there's those little caveats that we try to dive into, like the missing time or things along those levels. Like, if I like referring back to that Hynek scale, the CE5 scale, and how it kind of stepped up to the CE4s, and now we have CE5, of course. So pushing that threshold to see if there's a there. And I think nowadays we are more open to that concept, whether we try to think of it from that spirituality concept of higher dimensions, or if it is from a scientific lens looking at it of, well, what's the Schrodinger box one? I always like that, the cat in the box,
Schrodinger's
like
cat,
everything's
yeah.
happening right now or is happening, will happen, and that infinity, don't open the box type stuff, or do open the box. So that's where I fall into that X-Files I want to believe poster saying, it's like there are these things, but, it's like I said earlier, Tim, I don't know if you heard this, it harkens back to my bad Catholicism. Like, I don't want to think Jesus is an alien. Like, so in the same sense that I don't want to believe that the extraterrestrials or the ET is a demon. Like, I think these things are getting murkied and blurred, and cherry picked a little bit. And I think we need to allow some things to remain what they are and still explore this topic accordingly. I just don't like slapping that label, like even saying that it's an alien. I like having the wide terms of not knowing what that is. That
You
light
like
being,
to keep the
that
door
hooded
open.
being, that shadow figure, that elf, that fairy, it opens up a grand funnel of what this could be, but we still need to hold fast to the thousands of years of traditions from our own spirituality instead of trying to force that into being something that it's not. So I don't think we're doing ourselves any favors that way, I guess I should say. So when
Yeah,
yeah,
I tend to agree with you because we don't know exactly. And, once we start saying, I know, you're doing yourself a disservice.
well, listening to experiencers encounter beings, and especially if they have encountered this, what they think is the same being over and over again, they inevitably end up having these conversations with the being. What are you? Are you an alien? Are you this? Are you that? And then that's when you hear that, like, well, sort of, but not really. Or you get the riddly answers, like, I am one and all and everything. It's like, you never get that straight answer. And a lot of people think that's like the trickster element at play. But yeah, I think it's that mystery within, and we want to put a label on it, and it's still driving us to really discover it in its entirety. So that's where I think it's leading us. You got aliens.
Yeah. Yes, we do have aliens.
Right. Well, I mean, what if it is something from a different dimension or plane? And we talk about this all the time. Like, what if what they're putting through to us isn't even actually them? It's some sort of apparatus or some intermediary to how they even can try to communicate with us. It's little things like that. It could be a reverse. They might be going, holy crap, how did we do that? Can we do it again? Try to do it again. Just the same way, like, we went to the moon and then didn't go back to the moon. Somebody else tried to go to the moon and exploded tardigrades all over the moon. It's like, we're going to try to go back to the moon again. It's like, we might be seeing some failures or we might be seeing some one-offs. We don't really know anything. So, yeah.
I
You can't-
I can only say this is what I experienced, but I can't say that I know exactly what it was.
Yep. And that's where I say we can't just fall back to the nuts and bolts on this, because so much of it is in academia and in that psychological reality of when you experience something, it's real to you, whether it's trauma or post-traumatic stress from a trauma or that dream or, all these things that feel realer than real have that emotional effect and weight on you. So does that mean it's not a reality and it's fake? Like, there is that experience, which is why I like us being called experiencers now. If it's so much more than seeing a little light in the sky or a numinous experience with a being. So
Yeah.
it's fun.
Okay, guys, are we done here for the night?
We might be. Dave just
Thank
flopped
you
back
so
down.
much for having me, you guys. It's been a lot of fun. It
Yeah,
really
Tim,
has.
it was nice. You came
Yeah,
back.
thanks for coming on.
I came
For
out of
sure.
nowhere too.
For
You might
sure.
have been back for a while. This was my return after, I think, over a year
All right,
hiatus.
I will go ahead and sign off, and I will see you all very soon. Dave, keep growing that beard, and
Yeah, we will.
it's it's great to see you guys. Let's all keep our fingers crossed for tons of disclosure. Keep their
Absolutely.
feet to the fire on this. Talking.
All right,
Well,
good night.
Good night.
All right. I think I'm gonna head out too. I need to get
I
some
will
sleep.
too. I don't know how to hang up my stuff. So
You don't? You want
I
me to
think
hang it up for you?
I think I just hit buttons and then I disappear. So I'll be
Oh.
okay. But
All
I'll say
right.
bye. Bye, Dave. Bye, Lee. Is
Bye.
Dave? Oh, look, Dave's coming back. Dave,
I'm
are you
just
back?
here to say that we're on a commercial break right now, so I just wanted to come and say good night to everybody.
Yep,
And
I'm gonna
thank
hang it up.
you for
We're
everybody
saying
for
bye
everything that you've
and
done.
good night.
Thanks for a
Thanks.
great show, guys.
Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
me on, Dave.
All right, take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.